Zap.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, bang on 7:30 this Monday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Sheahan Eoin with you all the way through until 10. At one stage over the course of the weekend, and I thought that Tom Brady's overshadowed the weekend with his leaked retirement, and then the fact that he wasn't retiring officially at all yet. Oh, he's going in his own terms. No, he's not. He's gone on the terms of some NFL insiders who are like getting out ahead of the curve. And then it's like, well, maybe I haven't retired. So we don't know yet, right? So there's no point in talking about that. And then I thought it would be Rafa Nadal or maybe Rory McIlroy. But it turned out the main story was your boys taking one hell of a beating in the final 15 minutes of the game between Kerry and Kildare at Newbridge, which you had a front row seat for.
Absolutely. Congratulations to everybody in Kildare. I'm sure you're delighted with your success.
Yeah.
It's going for the unbeaten season from this point forward.
The Invincibles, I believe they're calling us.
Yeah, absolutely. New management, a support base that are very much entrenched now and behind the team, and a team that's looking pretty good at the moment in Kildare. Great comeback win. It was certainly one of those 4 to 5 point wins that existed in Newbridge yesterday. One of those classic Alliance League days. It was like, you know, the dirtier it got, the wetter it got. It was like, yeah, this is January. This is real first round of the National League sort of stuff. And Kildare leaned into it, and it turned out pretty well for them in the end. They could well have and possibly should have won the game in the end.
I think all Kildare supporters are kind of a little bit concerned. Historically, we've been bouncing up and down in recent years, and there have been years where we've lost every game or close enough to it in the top division. And so therefore, when the score was 4 or 5 points at half time or just before half time, you're like, ooh, this could get away from us here. And it's a really tricky league, as we've seen. There ain't no bad teams in it. Maybe the Dubs, we'll see. You were like, oh, and then the second half to come back out and to get into it. I'm obviously not overreacting, and I think Glenn Ryan was a pains to point out, like, actually, you know what, we will go straight back down if we don't improve on our first half performance in particular. So the management team aren't getting carried away with it, but supporters are allowed to get carried away. It's all in our mouth at the moment. I'm like, yes, I'm feeling myself.
What are you going to do? Just be like, oh, you got to play down our chances because it's only the league. I mean, that would just completely defeat the purpose of what being a sports fan is. Like, it's really interesting. Like, I just on the football pod last week, listening to James and Paddy talk about the game against Dublin, which is fixed for Newbridge on the 27th of February, and they were just like, oh, that game will be moved to Croke Park.
Yeah,
will it definitely be moved to Croke Park? No. Like after yesterday?
No. Shut up, lads.
There has to be another Newbridge or nowhere movement if that game is going to be moved to Croke Park, because it is a bit of a fortress for them. I think, as we'll discuss later on, maybe a smaller, more confined ground may actually suit Dublin at this point, as opposed to Croke Park, which is an interesting development. But that game in Newbridge is my point.
Yeah, I suppose. But then wait and see. Let the management decide.
Yeah.
In Glen we trust. In Glen and the Brains trust we trust. Intro of the week, by the way, goes to potentially intro of the year. I'm going as far as intro of the year so far. Malky Clerkin's match report in the Irish Times. Kildare 13 points, Kerry 110. There's nothing like January football to make you wonder why you were pining for football in January. This game was the full Simon Coveney. Cold, hard to love, and littered with mistakes. Simon Coveney is like literally basking in his greatest triumph. He's getting tweets from Stevie Van Sant, you know, wishing that they had the same balls as the Irish fishermen. He's like, yeah, look at me. And then Malachi's just like riddling him with metaphorical, lyrical bullets there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, like I think that everybody there is kind of looking around with a sort of a level of self-satisfaction in the terraces yesterday, being like, yeah, we both know that we went that over our way, knowingly stepping into the fortress that is Newbridge, knowingly stepping out into the weather that was outside the window this morning. So I think everybody kind of comes away, regardless of the results, with just an extra level of self-satisfaction.
Yeah, you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I mean, I love the league. Absolutely love the league. It's like, without kind of reflecting too much on what Kerry have had over the last couple of years. There is kind of like a rhythm to the summer that kind of gets disrupted by the league. There's a bit more of a randomness to it. You don't know what grounds you're going to be travelling to. I'd never actually watched a game in Newbridge before yesterday, and you get to go to all these I was going to say brilliant places. I mean, you get to go to all these interesting places and all these grounds that have different setups. Some are great, some are not so great, and even the ones that are not so great, there's a story to tell from them, and there is a certain kind of badge of honour about going to all these games. Like, the league is great. Like, we saw it yesterday as well with all the draws. Football may not have been brilliant at times as a result of the conditions, for sure, but you're getting close games. You're going down the home stretch not knowing what's going to happen. And in the one game where they was sort of sewn up before the dying stages was possibly the most extraordinary result of the weekend then in Armagh beating Dublin. So I think it's a phenomenal competition, and I think you come away with a lot to talk about after yesterday alone.
How was the ground?
The Newbridge is not in a good way, is it? I'm not sure when was the last time you've been to Conlitz Park. Like, in fairness, I think Kerry can't really speak, given Killarney's in a bit of a bad state as well. But Newbridge is similar in that it's in a great town, but the ground itself is just not up to scratch. Like, it was the queues getting in were disastrous yesterday. I think it was 15-minute delay, was it, to throw in time in the end. Getting out of there was just as slow as well. And like, I mean, I know that there's a plan for redevelopment on the ground over the next little while. It'll bump the capacity up by double, I think, actually, from 8,000 to 15,000 or something like that. And it would be great because, like, if Kildare are going to have a home ground that they can be proud of and something that they can actually get a bit of revenue out of, they're going to need to bump it up from 8,000. It was a great atmosphere yesterday, don't get me wrong, and as I say, Newbridge is a great town, but they need a better ground in there for sure. Alright,
7:36 this morning. Give us a view. What games were you at over the course of the weekend? We'll get to Anthony Moyles at around about 8:10 this morning. We're doing the performance rankings in a moment, and we will have to do an emergency power rankings this week because Armagh have put the cat amongst the pigeons. Will the Dubs be outside the top four for the first time? Who knows? Maybe. They might be. Maybe they should be, if that crisis is real. We'll get to that in the performance rankings in a moment. We're going to do sports pages at 8:30. Ronan O'Gara at 8:45. Got Mike Carlson at 9:05. Deal or no deal. Very busy weekend on the transfer front. Liverpool in action. Spurs in action finally. Calvin Phillips. West Ham trying to tempt Leeds with lots and lots of money, but getting nowhere for him or Rafinha at the moment. We'll get into all of those. And we'll play some Alan Dimmock at around about 9:30 this morning. At 7:37, if you want to get in touch, 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors. Time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
I was about to tweet yesterday that Meath's performance being so bad meant that we wouldn't have to listen to them being spoken about every week on the football pod, but in our pre-show meeting we have Anthony Moyles on today, and Tommy was like, I've tipped him off that we're going to talk about Meath because they didn't score in the first half. I'm like, no, we're not talking about Meath anymore. We don't have to. They're off the agenda, right?
Like, I mean, Galway, shame on Galway for allowing Meath to score in the end yesterday.
Then we would have been allowed to talk about it.
100%.
They scored 6 points. It's like, who cares?
More shots to Galway, apparently, according to Tommy in the pre-show meeting.
That was it, yeah. Tommy's like, get me in there, coach. What are they're not in our performance today. They could be in red, but they're not.
No, there were two bigger, I think, defeats, if you want to call them that go straight into red this week. Dublin and of course Rory McIlroy go into the red this week. So we should start with Dublin. Beaten soundly by Armagh Saturday night at Croke Park. This is not a result that people saw coming. I think in our quick picks on Friday we all picked Dublin, but we did all sound a lack of confidence in our predictions that Dublin were going to win this because they weren't amazing during the O'Byrne Cup. They still got the job done. They still won it. They still came into this on the back of a couple of wins in pre-season. They were at home. The Hill was going to be back open, and there was enough there to be confident that Dublin would get the job done against a team who were potentially still finding their feet in Division 1. I guess perhaps we underrated just how good this Armagh team is and how ready they are to challenge for league titles, for Ulster titles, and potentially even for an All-Ireland over the course of this summer. And we possibly, well, I would say definitely underrated just how big the problems are in Dublin at the moment. I definitely felt a couple of weeks ago that we would see a sting in the tail from Dublin either this season, next season, that they would do a Kilkenny/Kerry in the 1980s job and come back and win an All-Ireland.
I would like to say you were a lone voice on this show that said that.
Yeah, I was.
Just to put that out there.
And I just put that down to the degree of quality that can't have gone anywhere. Now, I stand by that part of the argument, which is that quality can't have gone anywhere. And you will not see Brian Fenton, Brian Howard, Ciarán Kilkenny as a collective underperform to the level that they did on Saturday night too often. That will come good for them over the course of this year.
Why?
Because they have shown in the past that they are generational talents.
Okay, but they've had their at-bat and they have won more than anybody has ever won. Okay, so not in a row, right? So they don't have the record yet. None of them have the record yet for the most individual. But they don't seem like they're particularly individualistic people. It's very difficult for them to be as enthusiastic about taking the punches and the training and the diet and the pliability and the physio, the hours and hours of that stuff for no money, right? Whereas for other teams coming now, like the greatest trick to get this Dublin team back is to somehow convince them that they need to do this, even though they're capable of doing it, because they know they're capable of doing it. Like, desire in sport is hugely important. And I'm not saying it's about hunger or any of that kind of stuff. It's actually, it's creating the culture where they feel like they have unfinished business. But how do you have unfinished business when you did 6 in a row?
I would say that they have shown as a group over the last couple of years that if you aren't up to it in terms of your desire to win in All-Ireland, you can just walk away. You can just, like Paul Manning just walked away, Jack McCaffrey just walked away. We don't know whether or not there's a lack of desire from Stephen Cluxton. We will never know. But if you're not having it, if you're not feeling that level of want for this year's All-Ireland, people have shown that there's a door. Go and leave. What are you hanging around for if they're not prepared to show that level of commitment this year? So I've still got a couple of my chips in the Dublin are going to come back basket. But believe you me, I am frantically taking a few of them out of there and trying to put into the colour
look at Armagh and Derry.
that Dublin are not coming back this year because they were extremely bad at times on Saturday night.
There are a few very important players still to come back for them, and I think it's hard to know where Armagh are at, right? Armagh must be looking at Division 1 this year and going, if we establish ourselves as a Division 1 team over the next couple of years, every single year we're going to be in contention. And particularly if this is the end of the Ulster Championship being the millstone around Ulster County's necks that it has been, although they say they're going to go for it hammer and tongs, we'll see. Then next year could be an incredible year because they're still a young side. Okay, they've a lot of maturity now because Geezer's had them together for many years, but they've strength and depth. They have a definitive style of play. There's an evolution going on there. You can see Donaghy, right? You can see like the basketball stuff, and I think Armagh are really good. So I wouldn't overrate the crisis. I think it's being pronounced as a crisis in all the papers, and you see all sorts of wild speculation, which we've never seen really about the Dubs. Because they were winning every year, there was like minor bits of it, but they are prone. The GAA folk, the good GAA folk of Dublin, are prone to the same gossip as Mayo and Kerry. They've just been immune to it for the last number of years because of success. So I don't think it's as bad as people say. Like but I don't think that I'm certainly not shooing them in to be as good as the team of the last couple of years.
And I would say that they don't necessarily need to be to win in All-Ireland. I think that...
Do you not think the standard is getting better? That Tyrone and Kerry last year were at a very high level.
I'm not sure. I think that if anything, Tyrone showed last year that, so the standard of football was excellent, but Tyrone maybe showed that you can come from not anywhere, but from the mid to upper reaches of the top tier and win in All-Ireland and steal in All-Ireland, whereas it felt that Dublin were at such an unbelievable level that nobody could ever get there. And actually it was possible for a team of a lower standard than the Dublin 6 in a row team to come along and win in All-Ireland because Dublin's standards dropped. So can Dublin get to the level that Tyrone were at last year? I thought so a couple of weeks ago. The evidence, if you're going to base everything on Saturday night, is that they won't. But
well, it depends, right? If Conor Callahan comes back and is Conor Callahan from a couple of seasons ago, absolutely. And if James McCarthy comes back and is his Footballer of the Year standard, then that's a massive injection. But maybe they're at the same level of their form as the rest of the team are at the moment, and they don't transform the fortunes. It's hard to know, but they could, So that's why I'm not getting carried away about this. Like, do you expect Dublin to win the Leinster title and therefore to be reaching the All-Ireland quarter-final stage with, form and fitness? And it's 10 weeks to the start of the championship. And then there'll be another 6 weeks before we get to a meaningful game. But if they say they have to go through the back door and play a load of games and go on the road and have one of those seasons where we had a big night out after a qualifier against Leitrim up in Carrick, everybody had a great time, we met the supporters and it was a real bonding moment for us. Like, let's wait and see.
When you mentioned there as well, like the 10 weeks of championship thing, I mean that's 10 harder weeks for Armagh, for example, to get into focus for than Dublin. I mean they need to be primed for that, whereas Dublin potentially don't need to be. Again, it's strange though that we even talk about Dublin in such a way, because there was no priming themselves, it felt, in the league over the last couple of years. Every game they went out to and performed pretty well in. To be honest with you, there were only very small blips here and there.
Yeah. Much bigger squad of players who are more experienced, and I think that's the key thing, isn't it?
Oh, that's
me anyway.
That is the biggest issue. Is that you're talking about Conor Callaghan and James McCarthy coming back into the team? They're guaranteed starters. You're talking about some of the players that have won the All Irelands and were part of the 6 in a row. They're guaranteed starters. It felt that nobody was a guaranteed starter under Jim Gavin because of the depth, whereas now what you have is you have the subs and you have the starters, and you have a couple of players who are going to start a couple of games and be on the bench in a couple of games, and there'll be a bit of mixing and matching there. But the competition for places is not what it was before. The next generation coming through have not proven yet that they're going to be up to the previous standard. But then again, the previous standard was the greatest team of all time, so it's going to be really, really hard to come anywhere close to that. What I'd be also concerned about is the direction that Dublin are playing in. Like, what is the identity of this Dublin team at the moment? It felt that chasing the game against Armagh on Saturday night, they didn't have a direct plan. They panicked a bit, but even at times it felt blasé almost about how they were going about the game, that there wasn't any urgency. And that seems like a really kind of contradictory thing to say, that there was panic and then there was a lack of urgency. But it felt that at times they were going lateral and then they were like, screw it, let's just go route one. And where was the penetration? Where was the Jack McCaffrey-esque run off the shoulder that could break down that sort of defence? I just didn't see it on Saturday, and it was very like the collapse against Mayo in the second half last year, where all of a sudden their powers of composure deserted them. Will they be able to get that back over the next couple of weeks? Well, that's something that they can work on. Yeah. But it's very worrying that it didn't exist on Saturday.
So you were actually at the game, right? You were down the bottom left-hand corner as we were watching on telly. Were you in the first half?
You right behind Rian O'Neill as he put over that beautiful curler off the right foot.
And so you would have seen the attacking formation of both teams like right in front of you, and it looked clear in the first half that when Armagh had the ball, everybody knew exactly what their role was. It was programmed where they were supposed to go. When they got there was options. You're creating an option for, if you go, like at one point a phalanx of Armagh players ran ahead of the ball and created space, and then gave options to the ball carrier to either he could pivot and turn around and kick if he wanted to, or there was a runner inside, which means that you're going for goal and you're looking for the fisted pass, the backdoor cut, as we kept seeing last year. And it was like, well, that's pretty interesting. They know what they're doing. These guys have been drilling, and they know what they're doing. In the second half, you're saying you saw none of that really from the Dubs.
No,
it was off the cuff stuff.
Yeah, and I think obviously the way they've played over the last little while is of such control that when they get into a lead, they're very hard to claw back. The problem now for Dublin is that since the gap is closed between them and the rest, is that they're going to be in a lot of losing positions, and they're going to be in a lot of topsy-turvy games. And I'm not sure this style of play actually suits that. If we're going to overreact completely to Saturday, and you're a Dublin fan, you might be pining for the days of the chaos again. Like, you wonder, is that actually just the way forward? And just say to yourself, screw it. We've got the likes of Scully, Howard, O'Callaghan, and we've got good forwards who can take a score. Fenton can take a score from open play. Dane Rock can do the same thing. Do you just like plug out the straitjacket and say, listen, not to throw the game plan away, because that's a good crutch to have if you are winning a big game, but to go back to the level of ratcheting up crazy. Yeah.
Mayo. So Mayo go a man down yesterday, and suddenly it's like, right, we're stopping the thing that we were doing up to this point, and then they go chaos, full Brownian motion, and kick 5 unanswered points to wrestle the game back to draw.
Yeah.
Like, that's it must be very infuriating when you're in charge of Mayo, and it's like, we're going to try and do this thing, and we're going to be the team who can grind out in All Ireland, and then it's not great. But then you go back to your DNA, and it's like, we're amazing, look at us. But you never know what's going to happen. You can't guarantee. So I don't know. I mean, it certainly sets the championship up for something pretty interesting. I think, and look, I think that Dublin have come back to the pack to the point where they're no longer a shoe-in for the top 4 in your power rankings on a week-to-week basis. I think at the moment you would have to say they have to come back but I think they probably will come back to a level, and it's what that level is at. That's my question.
Yeah, I wonder, like, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how Kildare go over the next little while, but maybe before that ball was thrown in Newbridge yesterday, you could have said that there was maybe 7 teams in Division 1 who could all take points off each other, or who could beat one another in a championship game. Maybe Kildare go on a great run now and it becomes 8 teams. But it does feel that you can throw a blanket over them to a certain point, especially this time of the year when the scores are a bit lower, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and look, Galway were full showbiz mode.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, look at us, we're back.
Yeah.
You know, they were pre-COVID league form again. And they've been flaky since, so who knows?
Yeah,
What's the real Galway? Stand up and tell us. Right, we got to move on from that. Who else?
Let's just mention Rory McIlroy in the red yesterday, because he bottled it in Dubai. There's no getting away from it. Like, it's very hard to kind of put a fine point on exactly what goes wrong with McIlroy in these moments. Granted, things haven't exactly gone wrong for him in Dubai too often in the past. He loves the place, but this was a chance to get a third title at this competition. Like, I mean, you see him with 4 holes left when Hovland is in the clubhouse, and you think to yourself, right, 1 birdie here will do it for McIlroy. And there's a couple of stuttering moments. There's that moment on the 17th, isn't it, when he goes onto the really thick stuff or into the crappy stuff really near the crowd, and he's standing over the ball and he's like, this thing could effing go anywhere. And everybody at home is like, excuse me, everybody's like, this really reminds me of my own game. Wow,
Rory McIlroy's come to get you.
The Newbridge fumes have completely infected me. Everybody at home is like, yeah, this really reminds me of my own play. And then on the 18th, there's just this, not that you could see what was coming, but when the lads are finishing up in the green, and Rory's been in this position so many times before where he's standing over a ball and you have to wait, you're the last man out, and you're just standing over that shot for minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes, and you're thinking about it, playing it over in your head. You see the massive drink in front of the green and you're like, all I got to do is just not hit that, especially given it was the second shot. He could have overshot the green and still got up and down and possibly got his birdie and not even needed the playoff, but he went for it. He went for the shot that would have got him into eagle position, and he ended up paying for it, and it wasn't even close. Can
I just make the other side of this argument, is that he's won this competition tournament multiple times. Yeah. He's trying to find form. If he wins this again, he's standing there and there's the check and there's the trophy, and it's like, oh, it's great, I really love this place. But it actually doesn't mean anything in the long term for him. And I've hammered Rory in this show as much as anybody has, and kind of talked about whether or not he's even relevant when it comes to the conversations in the majors later on. It felt like he wasn't a couple of years ago, and then he wrestled the game back, and every time you think you're out on Rory, he pulls you back in. Right. He's had that shot. He won an Irish Open at the K Club with, I think, almost exactly the same scenario where he needed to hit the par 5 and 2, hits the par 5 and 2, wins the tournament. He's done that a million times. He's also crapped out, and you either see this as I'm going for this because I can. I'm making a pile of it and I'm going for it because I'm at that stage of my life where what difference does it make if I win this? Well, none really. A few extra ranking points, another thing like. I think he's better to go for it and fail than not going for it.
Like, I mean,
it speaks to I'm Rory McIlroy aggressive, and that's who I am, and I'm playing on my strengths, and I'm going to win or lose. I'm going to live or die by that. I die today, I'll live another day, and the only way he's going to win, I think, at the Masters is by being himself and being true to himself.
Like, I like the attitude of don't give him the playoff. Like, if that's in his head and he's seeing the two boys level on the same score as him, like, his mentality would be like, don't even give him a chance for the playoff. Like,
that's it.
I like that mentality. The thing is, like, as I say, like, the shot was appalling. Like, I mean, it was a mile off. Like, I know this has been spoken about so many times in the past, but like, does a more hard ass caddy change that shot? Is it like, hold on a minute, Rory, like, I mean, you are great and I admire what you're doing, but listen, here are the facts and figures, here's what you've been, like, I mean, you've birdied that, I think you birdied that hole the previous 2 days, and it's like, this is statistically what you've been doing, this is exactly how you played a shot well, and this is how you're going to win this tournament. And I just wondered, did he need a cooler voice telling him that? A
computer instead of his mate.
A computer, exactly.
I don't know. It's hard to tell, isn't it? Because, like, if he has the computer, is he even in contention this week, as opposed to having that friendly environment, which seems to matter so much to him?
I'm not sure, but like, we were having this conversation last week with Nathan on the show about modern golf perhaps not having enough jeopardy, no Jean Van de Velde moments.
Well, there you go.
We got it, you know, so at least we can put Rory in the green when it comes to drama.
The biggest winner in golf over the course of the weekend, though, was of course John Duggan, whose virtual insanity. I was watching this thinking, Zalatoris is in, and I had completely forgotten that it finishes on the Saturday. So I was like, Zalatoris doing pretty well here. I wonder what will happen tomorrow. Of course, the Farmers finishes on the Saturday, so it doesn't clash with the football on the Sunday. And Zalatoris was in a tie for the lead or a shot clear, and he had him at 28-1, a fiver each way. And then I scanned through the rest of the golfers and was like, oh, that's pretty good. So he's definitely going to make some money. But I had missed the fact that he had tipped Luke List at 80-1, who was bearing down on Zalatoris, who catches him and then duffs him up in the playoff.
Yeah.
And wins at 80-1.
Yeah, some of us were on the virtual insanity hype train last week, so I had a pretty happy Saturday night. I think I texted John Duggan at around 3 o'clock in the morning saying, I want to kiss you. And he was like, winning does weird things to people. And I was like, yes, it does, John.
So he was also up celebrating.
He clearly was. Like there was it was quite a compelling evening of golf, and I thought Jason Day was going to steal away our great winnings on Saturday night with his chip in from 100 and something yards, which put him into a share of the lead, I think. And I thought, right, okay, this Zalatoris List bromance is over, but it worked back out, and it was just a beautiful sort of tension-free playoff between two golfers that you've actually backed to win this thing.
We all watching JD's tips 23-35 on Saturday, and then just
you can't be like, I mean,
quoting quoting your own WhatsApp. repeat. That's all you could say. That's fine. No, I didn't do any more. There you go.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
This week's virtual insanity coming your way on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Who's in the amber? This is harsh. Who's in the amber?
Oh, people know, but somebody has to just go on the amber at some point. Like,
no.
Give me another.
What do you got against this history making team?
It's everything is either great or terrible all the time. So finding somebody in the middle, finding a bit of nuance is our biggest problem on the show. And the Ireland Women's Sevens team, they are the team of nuance this week. So the Rugby Sevens was on in Seville over the course of the weekend. In fairness, as in an overall sense, they were in the green. No getting away from that. It's just a final that has dented the level of green at the moment. So they make their first ever final in the Rugby Sevens. They go 12-0 up against Australia in that game, and then they lose in the final play of the game. It was absolutely heartbreaking stuff. An unbelievable tackle actually against the Australian player in that closing play, where you think to yourself, right, they've managed to save this thing, but Australia just had 3 players out wide and they still managed to get over the line. So over the course of the few days, Ireland beat Poland, Brazil, Russia, Canada, and then England. Beating England was the big one. And like in an overall sense, you're looking at some of these players who are going to be playing in the Six Nations, obviously, from the end of March. And just the level that they're getting to is unbelievable. Like they do this thing on the Rugby Sevens, the DHL impact player, where they throw in your tackles, breaks, offloads and carries and gives you a total score. Lucy Mulhall and Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe came second and third respectively in that. So some of the figures from that, Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe had like 22 breaks over the course of the weekend. Lucy Mulhall made 68 tackles over the course of the weekend and made 100 carries. There were 2 unbelievable performers, and of course you'd like Bevan Parsons in that team as well, who was just a superstar. So it is, in fairness, a positive weekend for them, but you know what, we need someone in the amber, and Australia came back from the dead against them. The men's team then came 4th. They lost in their semi-final to South Africa on a 26-0 scoreline.
All right. Shifty Lad says, morning lads, I think the GA are missing a trick. The leagues dictate the best teams. The All-Ireland should be played in conjunction with the leagues. It happens in all sports, to be fair. Have a great week. Oh, and the Bengals. And then Andrew Garrity says, how about them Bengals? Well, the biggest win of the weekend, they're in green.
They absolutely are. Joe Burrow, and the ice that runs through his veins has got them into the green this morning. Somebody might have gone to bed early last night. Plenty of you would have gone to bed early last night, because when Patrick Mahomes is in a lead and playing out of his skin...
Was it 21-3?
21-3?
Yeah, they scored 3 more points in the rest of the game.
You can see why people go to bed at that point, but I'm not sure what I was doing, kind of clinging on, and what I was expecting to happen, because I wasn't expecting...
Did you stay up and watch the whole thing?
I stayed up and watched the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you saw it happen
I saw it happen in real life. You see, the thing is... when, I'm not sure how everybody else felt about this, when the Bengals actually draw level in this game, obviously there's a strange atmosphere coming from Arrowhead. It's that strange kind of mix between like a lull and concern. But it even kind of felt that the commentators didn't believe this was going to happen.
No.
I didn't believe this was going to happen. Like in my WhatsApp group, I was like, does anybody actually think that the Bengals are going to win this game? Now, the response from people who've been watching Joe Burrow for a long time was like, yeah, this is going to happen. but it's still Mahomes on the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem. It wasn't so much about it doubting Joe Burrow in any way. He's been brilliant throughout these playoffs. The thing was, there was like a full quarter left to go. Patrick Mahomes is going to get an opportunity to not score once or twice or three times, but he's the sort of guy who could fire in 4 touchdowns in the course of a quarter, and he was absolutely like a knife through hot butter in that entire offense in the first quarter of the game. So I just thought they would get back to that level, and it just didn't happen. He was dreadful in the second half. Even in overtime, then you think to yourself, right, I think the Bengals get the coin toss to go for heads, and you're like, what are you doing going for heads? And they end up losing the coin toss, and it's like, well, that's that. We saw this last week.
Yeah.
The Chiefs are going to win.
Away you go.
There you go.
And what happened?
And he throws a pick.
Like straight away. Second, third, it was in the first, so...
Yeah, in
their first 3 and out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
their first whatever.
Set.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like a tip interception. Like what's the Sherman? What year was that when there was that tip interception in the big playoff game for the Seahawks against the 49ers, wasn't it? Sorry to bring that up again. It was very reminiscent of that moment. And then the way Burrow was playing in the second half, you're like, oh my God, they're absolutely going to do this, because they've obviously got Evan McPherson standing over the ball, and he's not missing at the moment.
He's a rookie
shooter, yeah. So
they got
it's
a rookie
incredible.
kicker. They picked him in the 5th round. You're not supposed to pick kickers because it's a waste of a pick. But this guy has just been unbelievable from 50 yards, no problems. And Booker missed a kick in normal time as well. So they missed. So there was kind of whole systems malfunction when they went 21-3 up.
Yeah, like completely. And again, those sort of moments seem relatively insignificant. One of the biggest system shutdown was right under. Did he stay up until halftime?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you saw the play before halftime.
Yes.
The Tyreek Hill getting stopped 4 yards out.
Why did not just take the 3 points on offer?
Exactly.
Like, they got greedy just before half-time to try and make it 28-3. And, 28-3, nobody's ever come back from that, have they? But, like, if it had gone 24-3, because 21-10 at that stage, because obviously...
yeah, they got a touchdown.
The Bengals had scored just before that. So, I don't know. It just seemed like the type of thing that if they hadn't won a Super Bowl, you would say they're one of the flakiest teams of all time, because they lost last year, they lost this year, and they've, you have your quarterback in his peak years for not very long. So the other game last night finished with the 49ers blowing a 10-point lead and losing by 3 points. So the 3-point win in these two games, you can't really want for much more drama than that. And Odell Beckham Jr. played really well. Cooper Kupp scores 2 touchdowns, and all the big moves that the LA Rams made. This is I think from a other sports perspective, if you're not even interested in the NFL, they put all of their money into global superstars. They've got a Galacticos plan, so they've got like the most expensive cornerback and the most expensive interior defensive lineman, and they spent a fortune on getting their QB. And then in the mid-season, they went out and they got Odell Beckham Jr. and they traded for Von Miller. So they've no draft picks really. They never have draft picks. And in fairness, the 5th and 6th round guys that they have started to do well. But they're now in the Super Bowl with a bunch of superstars who are all fit, playing in their own stadium. There's never been a team who's won the Super Bowl in their own stadium until last year when Tom Brady did it. And this year there's a chance for the Rams to do it again for the second time. So
Glazers, Kroenke, back-to-back Super Bowls as well. The good guys sometimes do win.
Yeah, it's I'm sure they are. Arsenal fans are delighted.
Yeah, look at how well you've invested in this team. And
so you spend lots of money on superstars and it seems to work. I mean,
yeah. What's the problem here? I wonder. Yeah, and also the lesson about for other sports as well is just how amazing the draft system works in the NFL. I mean, the Bengals turnaround to go from first pick 2 years ago to in a Super Bowl at this point. Obviously, last year I presume helped him a little bit. Burrow got a season-ending injury, and their record was terrible as well to go 4-11 last year.
Just think about how these playoffs have gone. So the Bills are the best team in football 3 weeks ago when they put up record-breaking numbers to annihilate the Patriots. The next week they go out in an absolute cracker against a team who must be better than them because they just beat them, and then that team gets beaten by another young superstar quarterback. So the AFC is set up for like incredible rivalry for the next 10 years if those 3 quarterbacks can all stay fit. But yeah, get on the NFL bandwagon. It's probably too late this season because the Super Bowl is actually the hardest one to watch because it starts so late.
Yeah, it's probably seen fewer Super Bowls than AFC Championship games over the last few years, to be honest with you. Unless we could just move the show to like 12 hours later or something like that, and that would be
maybe
ideal.
there's a case for that, is there? Would you all kill us if we didn't show up at 7:30 on the Monday after the Super Bowl? Instead, we started at 10 o'clock. What do you all think out there? Give us a quick yes or no in the YouTube comments.
We should get to the last point then in our performance rankings this morning, and Rafa Nadal is the last person in the green. Again, not something that many people would have seen coming if you had known the inner workings of the Rafa Nadal camp 2 months ago, because his injuries were so bad. He was pretty emotional, even just getting to the final at the weekend. His foot injury last season saw him miss the entirety of the second half of last season. Then he got COVID in December. He said afterwards yesterday that he had a lot of conversations with his team, with his family, about what's going to happen next in his career. Like really considering retirement. Yeah. Really considering just giving it up. And all he wanted to do was to play high level tennis again. He just wanted to get back in the court. He's always been asked about 21 and trying to get there. Maybe less so than Djokovic, but his thing over the last couple of weeks has been, I'm just happy to be back playing tennis again. I don't care about 21. I'm just happy to be here. And maybe that's, if you're looking for lessons from other sports, I mean, maybe that's a lesson for a lot of people. The eyes were not on the prize. The eyes were just on enjoying each match as it passed. Maybe deep down there was a deeper determination there, and I'm sure there was. But getting to 21, I might have said a couple of years ago he would have been the least likely of the three to get there, just because you thought you'd back him every day on clay. But there were obviously three other windows for the other two to potentially come back and extend the lead in some way, particularly Djokovic. Obviously, there were different factors at play for this year's Australian Open. I mean, we'll never know what would have happened had Djokovic been there. But second major of the year is Roland Garros. Be backing Nadal to get to 22 before Djokovic gets to 21.
Yeah, might be no Djokovic in France as well, unless he gets the jab in the meantime, which, you know, would have made the whole problem disappear in the first place.
Yeah, but we shall see. Maybe COVID will be totally gone by then, and the idea of vaccination will be entirely in the rearview mirror, and Djokovic can get back to winning slams.
Shane says Meath should be in the red, but they don't really register. They're not relevant anymore, are they? I mean, when they're relevant, come back to us. Isn't that it?
Yeah, they're your words.
You're going to drop them a couple of pages. They're on page 4 now after the humiliation of not scoring in the first half of a league game.
It's bad. Like, it was a bad weekend for the most talked about counties in the power rankings, namely Meath and Cork, both beaten soundly yesterday. So maybe the time is to talk about other counties, not Meath and Cork.
Eoin Carroll says 21 years ago it was the All-Ireland final. Now Galway versus Meath doesn't even make the performance rankings. Yeah,
sorry about that. Division 2 often gets overlooked when you've got the former 6-time All-Ireland champions getting hammered so soundly on Saturday.
I wonder, did anybody have an accumulator with the draws and the dubs being beaten?
Yeah, probably not.
what the price would have been?
Like, the thing was when we were coming out of Newbridge yesterday and Tyrone versus Monaghan was on, it was like, we don't even need to watch this game. This game is 100% going to be a draw, given the results that had developed earlier in the day and the fact that it was Tyrone and Monaghan.
No James McCarthy, no party, says Philip.
Yeah.
It's, you know, like, let's add him back into the team. But in the second half against Mayo last year, everybody looked like the system's failure had happened. So let's wait and see if the reintroduction of everybody fixes the dubs, because you would certainly say that the plan needs to be more obvious to everybody. We need to see the plan before we can I think fully assess whether or not it's working. And then Flying Hellfish 99 says, are these playoff games epic comebacks or epic meltdowns? I think there's definitely a Mahomes meltdown that people are going to talk about in that one. And like, I don't know, I haven't watched back the 49ers Rams game yet. I may never do that. We'll see.
Don't do that to yourself.
0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave a comment, get us on Twitter at OffTheBallAM. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications, because anytime we go live, we'll ping you a little message and you can just hit the button and away you go. Likewise on the OTB Sports app. We're going to take a quick break and we're back talking Gaelic football with Anthony Moyles.
OTB AM's Pressure Rankings with Gillette.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Club Championship Show on OTB Sports.
How many lives do Ballyhale get? St Thomas were the better team for 63 minutes.
And it all just happened so quickly. And T just perfection, I suppose. And I don't actually remember seeing it going past me. All I seen was net rattle. So
don't miss a moment of the GA Club Championship. Download the OTB Sports app, subscribe to the GA podcast feed, and watch the Club Championship Show every Wednesday across OTB's social channels.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Yeah, so the Allianz Football Leagues, the return of the Allianz Football Leagues proved to be as exciting and incident-packed as we might have hoped for after the long break. Turns out, I know the point earlier on that Malky Clerk was who really wants football in January, but we do want it. It gives us stuff to enthuse about for the rest of the year. I think maybe if your team gets beaten, it's like, it's going to be one of those years where maybe I should stop paying attention now.
There have been enough years in the past, though, for your team to get beaten or to perform disappointingly in the first couple of games, and then for brighter days to come along in the summer as well. So there's something optimistic about the grimness that you endure in January.
Well, it steals you. It's like pre-season training. Steals you for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Like that's certainly it from a supporter standpoint. Like if there was a fine, if there was no torrential rain over the course of the weekend, chances are you would have just got bigger results and better football. I think that the conditions are largely to blame. Or if you just put the entire thing into Connacht Airdome, you could have possibly got a better fare.
Well, I mean, is there some point in the future where you think that might happen, where we actually start watching these games indoor, where we look at progress happening around the world and say, a roof on a stadium is a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, like that would take away the element of misery, which is so integral to all of our existences as GAA fans, right?
What if there was somewhere in the middle of the country that had a roof on it and that had like 3 games on a Saturday and 3 games on a Sunday, and you just decided that we're going to have this festival of hurling and football every weekend?
I mean, that would be a very good idea. I think that would be a nice trial run for something like Sigerson, which is happening. Am I right? I'm literally just, I couldn't tell you where it's on this year, but I'd heard it was Connacht Airdome at one point, and I may have just entirely made that up. But that sort of blitz scenario in under a roof is exactly the sort of thing that it could be used for. Yeah.
All right, so I presume everybody knows the results at this stage. Some of the more interesting things that happened. Roscommon beat Cork 113 to 10 points. Clare hammered Offaly in the second half. I think they were behind at half time, or certainly Offaly had a good first half, 113 to 7. They're the main results from Division 2. Are they? I don't actually have the rest. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about Kilcoo, who are through to the All-Ireland Club Final after extra time as well. Their goalkeeper has become something of an icon, and his post-match interviews with Aisling O'Reilly are doing great business as we get to see, I don't know, the emergence of another GAA character into the light. The weekend fixtures next weekend are pretty interesting. It's Kerry Dublin on Saturday evening in Killarney. Those fixtures have been tasty in the past.
Tralee, yeah.
It's in Tralee, sorry. All-out brawl at various stages. It mattering more than we think it matters because both teams invest a lot in it. Armagh play Tyrone. They don't have a rivalry at all. That was one of the most important in the history of Gaelic football. Monaghan and Mayo, and then Kildare are up in Donegal. That's next week's fixtures, and everybody has a point apart from Armagh, who have 2, and the Dubs, who have none. Galway obviously hammered Meath in Division 2. Derry beat Down 110 to 6 points. Roscommon beat Cork, as I said, by 6 points. And Clare, very routine win for them in the end, 113 to 7 points. All right, we can hear now from Tommy Freeman, who was at the Monaghan Tyrone game for us with Aisling O'Reilly. Here he is talking about there being no love lost between the two.
And when you're looking on here today in these big occasions, do you miss it?
Definitely, Ashley. Nothing replaces match day. You know, when you come in, especially even league matches is great, but especially on championship day when you're, travelling up through the crowd on the bus, especially in the clowness of a championship day, the hair stands on the back of your neck. The other days you missed, they'll never replace it. But there comes a time when you have to call it a day. And I was lucky enough with the injuries. I kept myself in good enough shape, and I kept going up until I was near 40. So I didn't do too bad out of it.
Absolutely. It's tough to probably make that decision, I'm sure, to retire, but it's nice to be able to come here now and enjoy the games.
It is, yeah. It is, as I said, nothing replaces playing, and all of a sudden you find a big void in your life because you're so used to training maybe 4 or 5 nights a week, maybe 6 when I was with county, but then again you went back to your club, and when I retired from the county, it was great to have your club. That's where it all starts, Ashing, and it filled up. But as I said, now I've hung them up, and I putting in plenty of time with our juveniles back home. But yeah, it's great. You can come here and relax, and kind of half relax at times, but you couldn't relax very much. You're kind of very much on the edge of your seat. But yeah, that's it. But at the end of the day, there's nothing beats playing.
Tommy Freeman there, speaking with our own Aisling O'Reilly after the 9 points all draw between Tyrone and Monaghan. Tyrone were one of the shouts for a potential team to get relegated from James O'Donoghue.
Yeah.
What do you think? You aren't having that. You're thinking they're going to win it.
I thought yesterday I could I think they went into a couple of points lead early on. I was like, this is just be typical Tyrone. Just go and win the league now. Even though everybody's calling for them to go down, could still happen. Everybody can win the league. Everybody can get relegated after that weekend.
14 minutes past 8 this morning. Anthony Moyles is with us. Anthony, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, gents. All good. Sorry about that. A few technical difficulties.
No worries. We got there in the end. Speaking of technical difficulties, what's going on with the Dubs?
Yeah. I don't know, Jerry. I think the old the talk of their demise is maybe a little bit exaggerated. There's no doubt about it. I think there's issues, and I think Desi Farrell and his management team will probably sit back. A lot of people would say you learn a bit more from losses. Well, I think there's a couple of worries. Okay, there's probably worries that they have. They've tried a lot of players in the O'Byrne Cup, and there's definitely a number of positions that they have to get right. I think there's a number of positions that they're deficient in. And I think then there's also the psychological effect that the mask is slipping a little bit. And that teams are now kind of, whereas before, like we used to discuss this, and you nearly wouldn't discuss Dublin because it was kind of like, well, we've said giving them all the plaudits and we've said all the things. And actually, you got that sense that when teams were actually nearly playing against them, they weren't necessarily, they were playing for something else rather than the win. They were playing to try to get their own system right, or they were playing for something else. Whereas now, you get the sense the teams are saying, actually, we can go up there and we can have a right good cut at these lads and actually beat them. So, there's a number of things there, Ger.
Let's talk about the style of play. Are we seeing, is this early season difficulties when you're trying to establish a new style of play because you actually don't have the personnel nailed down, and so therefore it's not that important? Or is there an absence of style of play feeding into the fact that we're not sure who the best players are?
I get the sense, it's funny, like if I saw a lot of people talking about Kilmacud through the championship and into the Leinster Championship campaign. And it was this kind of thing where they were saying, Dublin football, and even if you remember a couple of the late stages in the Dublin Championship, people were saying it was desperate football. It was very formulaic. It was very kind of safe. It was very kind of, going across and back. I have to say, the performances on Saturday night, it reminded me, Eoin probably won't like this, but as a Spurs fan, I remember even the very, very good Arsenal teams of, 10, 12 years ago, they used to just play this football an awful lot, where it was just kind of across in front of the back four. It was just tipping across, constant movement of the ball. Looks really good. You're moving the ball very nice, loads of fellas getting lots of touches. But really the effectiveness, you're kind of going, Jesus, every now and again it would work. But you were kind of saying that literally you were nearly boring people to death. And I have to say, Dublin weren't really of that the last number of years. They were much more, direct. They were much more aggressive. Fellas, going for the jugular an awful lot more. Whereas now they seem to be playing in this, you can nearly preempt what's going to happen. A fella comes down the left wing. If he doesn't do a backdoor cut with his corner forward, comes in the loop, he passes out to him. Another player comes across, he takes it outside of him, he goes across the pitch, you go to the far side of the pitch, you do the same, the far side of the pitch, it comes back into the middle, and you're kind of going, well, we've seen this again, we've seen this, and as long as you're disciplined as a defence, which Armagh were for by and large parts of the game, and you're not fouling, well then, it's pretty easy to defend against. And I know the guys were saying on the commentary, Fitzmaurice was saying that the first half there was a serious lack of movement inside. Well, two things happened there. One, there wasn't probably as much movement as there should be, and I definitely didn't see a full forward line really busting a gut to make space and to switch runners and to cross and to develop that space in front of the D. But also there was a real lack of vision by the players outside. There was fellas, who had the opportunity to put the ball in, and who didn't really either A, they couldn't execute the pass, or B, they're so kind of trained now over the last while that no, the safer option is to just recycle the ball and come out and look for someone coming on the loop. So I think to answer your question, Jerry, I think yes, there are some, I suppose, some tactical things that I think maybe that they're trying to introduce, because I think a lot of people had a go at Desi last year and they were saying, oh, you fellas trying shots from everywhere, and you wouldn't have got that under Jim Gavin's days. So it's kind of like everything he tries, you can kind of see he's trying to bring a bit more discipline into it now, but maybe they're actually over-coaching them now. And maybe they're getting into a situation, as I say, where that bit of aggressiveness, that bit of flair, that bit of, like actually let the ball do the work type thing is not there at the moment.
And allowing for a bit of spontaneity, I guess, as well. Like I'd almost wonder if the outcome for Dublin this season would be better in this direction, or would it be better if they went back towards the 2013, 2014 era, where in the half-forward line you have a Diarmuid Connolly-esque player who is capable of kicking that pass that you're talking about there, to try and build a team around a traditional number 11 as opposed to the lateral hand passing and the fluid situation on the half-forward line?
Like Eoin, I kind of looked at the championship. I looked at even a lot of the games over the weekend, and I think teams are falling into two certain pots at the moment, and it's very, very obvious. There's the one style which is, as I said, formulaic, safe, disciplined. You're not going to give a whole pile away. And then what we're going to try to do is, on the counter-attack, we'll try and catch teams to fire. And then it's all about transition and speed of transition up the field and all that. And then you're relying on a couple of forwards. And really, when you look at Armagh did that very, very well, okay? They were kicking the ball when they got out of their defence. They were leaving lots of space up top, for O'Neill to operate in. And then that's what they were looking to try to do. But the opposite side then is, and I'm not seeing as much as this. And and when you think of the traditional teams that would be fast, kicking the ball long, as you say, have that bit of spontaneity, they're even falling into the first pot a bit. And I think maybe as the season goes and as the ground hardens up and you come into championship time, I think you will definitely see two styles. And one style will be a devil-may-care attitude. And I don't mean that to sound kind of frivolous about it, but I think you need to have that spontaneity. You need to have those players, and you need to unearth them. If they're not in your squad at the moment, I really think you need to go get them. And I'm kind of scratching my head around the championship or around the county, the country, and I'm kind of saying which teams have them, and which teams have kind of jettisoned them. And they probably need to get them back, because I do think that it's the thing that will unlock defences and will actually give you the capabilities to go and win All Irelands, and give you that kind of sense of, well, we can play it either way here. Because I think if you're in one way or the other, or certainly if you're in the first pot, as in trying to keep it tight, trying to be very, very disciplined, overly formulaic, I don't think you're going to win the games that really count in the championship. And my fear for Dublin, and I'd say this is something that Dessie Farrell will have to look at, is, does he have the players to come back who can give him that? Like, look, we know there's loads of players to come back, right? You've O'Callaghan, which is a massive, serious difference up front. And you have plenty of fellas to come in around the middle of the field and into the back line. But actually, it's this forward line that I actually worry. I looked at it the other night, and I'm kind of thinking as a defender, I'm saying, you know what? There's not too many guys there that are really scaring the daylights out of me anymore. There's not that much movement. There's not that much... there doesn't seem to be much fluidity between the players. There's no real understanding. And I know it's early, but they definitely, we used to say this about Mayo, that they needed to unearth an inside forward or two every year. Well, Dublin are in a bad need to unearth an inside forward this year, and a guy who can really take the mantle of the league on his shoulders, be Archer or one of those guys, and really have a go at the championship.
Is it possible Brian Howard is an 11 and not a 6?
Yeah, I didn't think he was great. Like, I mean, if you look at the first half, right, Grugan got the freedom of Croke Park, and he was able to spray balls left and right, and Howard essentially was dropping off, getting on plenty of ball himself, but he was all over the place. Now, when they tightened up the second half, the influence of Grugan, dissipated to a large degree. So, I think he's probably being put in there, Ger, because they're struggling at the moment. But I'm surprised they had Small out in the wing and they just didn't leave John Small in at 6. Like, I mean, John Small is your 6, if you ask me. And I would have put Howard into midfield. Now, I know they're trying to find a partnership for Fenton, but that's another area that they're struggling on.
But wouldn't he actually be a great centre forward type who is capable of doing that distribution, who's going to get on and rake a ball, and generally your 11 ends up getting on ball with the vast majority of the field in front of him if you do defend as deep as Dublin do? Yeah,
like, I mean, he look, the one thing you could say about Howard, as soon as he gets the ball, he gets his head up. His vision is always looking longer than just the first 4 or 5 yards, those small little hand passes. So yes, I think he could be used there. And of course, what that does then, you get McCarthy maybe into midfield, you get someone like Robbie McDade back out on the wing. Yeah. Now all of a sudden you're saying to yourself, no, actually, hold on a second. Yeah. The big guns are coming back.
We fixed it, Desi. No, don't worry. You can send us Christmas cards.
Well done, Ger.
Yeah. Come here. We haven't talked about Armagh. I legitimately think Armagh must be feeling themselves after this, and actually over the last couple of years. I mean, they had that crazy topsy-turvy game against Monaghan in last year's championship. Monaghan were right there with Tyrone. Tyrone went on and won the All-Ireland. We were all talking about all the teams in Ulster who get close to Tyrone must be feeling, geez, we're pretty close to this. Derry get beaten by a point by Donegal. Donegal have a man sent off against Tyrone when things are going pretty well for them. So those teams must all feel it. But with Armagh, this is like building for the last 4.5, 5 seasons, where a slew of muscular, athletic players who can all play football come up under an absolute legend who has taken some coaching from Stardust from Kerry, added it to the backroom team. This looks to me like a team who are ready to compete.
Yeah, they are. And they've been coming, as you say, for the last while. And, from what I know of Kieran, he's a guy who's always willing to try something different. He was always willing to kind of try, the whole goalkeeper kind of a situation that you're seeing that is so prevalent now. He's no problem using the goalie as an extra man. He has no problem trying different things. He loves the traditional style of football. He likes to kick the ball. He loves getting the ball in quick, creating space inside for his full forward line, using diagonal balls. And there's no doubt about it, Jared. They are a team that are on the uppers. They won't be lacking in physicality. They won't be lacking in fitness. They won't be lacking in conditioning. They won't be lacking in determination. They were absolutely full value for the win, and fair play to them. And he would have. Desi and himself obviously know each other well. I think probably Desi nearly maybe gave him too much respect, because you could see that Dublin didn't want to engage. They didn't want to go into the tackle, knowing that, like Armagh, this would be a trademark of theirs, which they'd hunt in packs and try to strip the ball of you, which they did on a number of occasions, but they could have done more if Dublin were a bit more adventurous. So that probably played into the Dublin psyche a bit. But there's no doubt about it. They've been, Ulster is going to be, again, extremely difficult this year. And added to the pack of the Donegals, the Tyrones, and the Monaghans now are a very, very ambitious, strong, skillful, and big, physical, big men of Armagh and Derry. That's so you see you've got 5 teams now that are really pushing hard. So it's fair play to Kieran, and I can only see that that's a big fill up for them. That's going to give them massive confidence at the weekend.
If you're picking your best inside forward line in the country right now, is Rian O'Neill in it?
I watched him an awful lot last year, and he can give it to you whatever way you want. He's a big boy. He's well able to mix it with you. You won't intimidate him too handy. He's very skillful. He's confident. He'll try something that you don't think he will. Like, he got a score the other night nearly from out on the sideline, and he nonchalantly just stuck it over. He's that type of player. And he can shift. He's fast as well. But he's also very, very good vision. He's great vision. He's able to drop out. He can stay in if he wants, but he also understands. I remember last year in the championship, he also understands that actually when his team need him, he can drop out and switch out. So he's a good player on, and he's a guy that's really leading the line, which you have to do when you're in that position. That's an awful lot of responsibility being put down on you. I thought Davy Byrne got a lesson from him. Second half, not so much. Byrne, got the finger out and tightened it up a bit. But, he was giving him the freedom of Croke Park, and O'Neill just said, thank you very much, and took advantage.
Kerry had a winning position against Kildare at Newbridge, 5 up at one stage before half-time, a lead for most of the second half. Jack O'Connor said they tried to defend the lead with 20 minutes left to go, and that was never going to work. He said that Gainey had a chance before half-time. He said that Clifford had a chance for a point, instead went for the goal and missed it before half-time, and they should have been 7 up. And it looks like he's going to try and recall his midfielders who are not playing at the moment. Or I don't know if they...
they're out in club action this weekend.
Right. All of them? David Moran as well?
Diarmuid O'Connor and Jack Barry, and David Moran has a groin injury that's going to keep him out until the championship.
Okay, so he won't be available, right? So it's a crisis in case of emergency. Break glass ahead of the Dubs next week for midfield. I don't know. It's an interesting start to the season. They put a full team out really in the pre-season competition to make sure that they were ready to hit the ground running, and they hit the ground running and then couldn't see out the winning position.
Yeah, like again, as you well know, you have to hear what Kerry managers say and then really have a listen to what they're saying. I don't think he'd be too upset, because that was always going to be a tricky fixture yesterday. You were going into the cauldron, which is Newbridge, and Newbridge, when it gets loud, as you well know, Ger, can be quite a spot. I've had a few ding-dongs there over the years myself, and when the Kildare crowd get behind the team, which they evidently did even pre-game, massive crowds, a delay of the game, not a lot of buzz around all the new management team, fellas who would, absolutely die for the jersey of the Kildare jersey, fellas who were also quite ruthless in their time. They weren't all nice boys, so they're well able to mix it up. The fellas that are involved, and they will put a ruthlessness, and they're going to try to put a belief back in that Kildare team. So, it's Kerry will kind of sit back and go, you know what? Yeah, we probably should have seen out the game. Maybe we should have went for the jugular a bit more when we had the foot on the throat. But those last 10 or 15 minutes, as soon as Kildare were able to sniff blood and the crowd got behind them and they really squeezed up on Kerry, you were kind of feeling actually this could flip the other way and Kildare could win this. And there was a lot of emotion, a lot of momentum. The trick now for Glenn and the rest of the management team will be, keeping that going over the next number of fixtures, because you can only go to that emotional well so often, as you know. But still, look, Kildare have a very, very good outfit. They're good forwards, but the real test will come later on, especially some of their away games. That'll be the real test of that team. And then Glenn and the management team will really know what they have to deal with. For Kerry, I don't think he'd be too bothered. He tried a number of things. He still has unbelievable forward prowess and power. I still have question marks over the structure of their defence and what they're trying to play. And yes, they saw a little bit of a change, but not as much that I need to get a bit more evidence just to say, okay, they really have that defence sorted now.
What's your sense of Sean O'Shea at midfield, Anthony? Like when I looked at it yesterday, it almost felt as if Newbridge was a bad playground for him, that the game with such a big breeze as well kind of can bypass a midfielder, or is that giving him a free pass, or giving the management a free pass for something that might not be working at the moment?
I think you just mentioned it there a couple of minutes ago. He's probably a fella that really knows he's not going to be there when the time comes and the important stuff. So you're going in. It's a square peg for a round hole. You're going into a position. He's big enough and strong enough, and he's mobile enough to get around the pitch. But you're taken from what he can do, which is, I would feel, is a supplier of killer passes and sublime passes to the inside line. Now, in saying that, you've got Clifford, of course, Paddy Clifford. So, people showed last year, especially certainly Tyrone in the latter stages of the championship, that if you can take him out, you can take the quarterback out and a guy who can deliver those passes. But I feel that you need two of those. So, if Clifford's not going to be able to do that, you need O'Shea, who's going to give you that ability, and also give you an ability where you can run hard at teams. So I think they're better off trying to work the two of them into the team and into that line, rather than say, okay, where are we going to fit O'Shea, because Clifford's going to be our 11. Because if you can get a 6, which Tyrone showed last year, who just takes them out and just follows them all around the field, well, then you're going to need someone else to step up.
We should briefly talk about Meath, otherwise Tommy Rooney is going to bash us around the heads. No score from the Meath footballers at half-time in what by all accounts is horrific conditions in Galway. Galway managed obviously to deal with them pretty well. Not the start that Andy McEntee would have wanted to the season after all the off-season nonsense.
No, and you know what? I hate to say it, but off-season nonsense has an awful habit of rearing its head again and again and again and again. And especially if you're having results like you're having yesterday, and especially if you're not winning. So it's always sitting there in the background. Someone can always pull it out of the back pocket and say, there was this upheaval. So, for Andy, and as management team, you're going in there a little bit on a sticky wicket, and of course the pressure is on straight away. I wasn't at the game, Ger, so, and I think people who might try to cast aspersions on Andy or whoever else, or even the team who weren't at the game, you can't, but you can just deal with the evidence, right? So when you look at the scoreline, not great, didn't score for 45 minutes. Their conversion rate was absolutely shocking. I was looking at the stats of the game. I think they were at about 22%. So they had something like 20 shots on target. I think Galway had pretty much the same. But they converted something like 22% of them. So that's an enormous statistic. If you were doing that in a club game, you'd be bet out the gate. So there's no reason why it shouldn't happen in inter-county. I think, Galway were up around 55 or 60% on their conversion rate. Would that have meant that if they got their rates up, they would have won the game? Probably not, but they would have at least kicked something like, 11 or 12 scores. Galway's not a place to go, Ger, half-cocked. And as soon as the Galway lads as soon as they smell blood, the confidence gets up. They had the conditions favouring them in the first half. The crowd get behind you, and all of a sudden it's a very, very long uphill battle. And you're not in a place that you want to be. There's a lot of talent coming through in me. There's a lot of younger guys who are pushing. There's probably a sense now where I don't think there's a knee-jerk reaction that you have to flood the team with these new young lads, but certainly you have to say, right, now's the time to give them a couple of shots in the league, blood them in, and let's see, can we unearth a couple for the championship. But you've got 2 home games coming. You've got the next one against Roscommon, and then you've got a nice break. So what you're hoping is out of your first 2 games, you'll have at least 1 win, and then I think they're down at home again. So the next 2 games are the ones where Andy will be. Of course there will be pressure, but they're the 2 games to get 2 wins.
On the Mayo Donegal draw, Anthony, just to kind of focus on Donegal this morning on this game, there does seem to be a growing sense at this point that Donegal struggled to see games out. I think if it was any other team, maybe there could have been a situation where you're like, this is January, it's first round of the league and nothing to worry about. But there was kind of a familiarity about how Donegal allowed Mayo back into the game yesterday.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit harsh, to be honest with you. I think people search for labels on teams, and they search for kind of little, I suppose, kind of analogies that you can just put on a team very, very quickly. Oh, they're a second half team, or they're quitters, or they're this or that. They played a traditional game. To be honest, I think the issue for Donegal is that, first of all, they have a situation where Mayo massively squeezed them in the second half. Mayo used the conditions. They finally woke up to the fact that the conditions were in their favour, and they used them. They squeezed them very, very hard. Mayo have a lot of very, very physical, big guys, and that when they decide to actually tackle you hard and hunt you down in packs, they've done it for the last number of years. They are going to turn you over. So you've got a sticky ball, horrible conditions. You're trying to get the ball out of your defence. You've got Mayo lads hopping off you, and you're turning the ball over. Donegal don't have as big a set of 6 backs. So then you're bringing fellas back in there like Murphy and Langdon to try to get a dig out, and it seems a long, long, long way up to the full forward line, in those conditions. Should they probably put it a bit more on the scoreboard in the first half? Possibly. I think, again, where we started the top of the conversation about being formulaic, I see, Donegal are nice to look at times, but they play these triangles where, if you have the ball in the middle, you head towards the sideline, the guy in the sideline stands on the sideline, he cuts in behind you flick him a hand pass, then the next guy comes at an angle off him. It's very kind of, nearly, I suppose, rugby moves where there's guys coming off the shoulder constantly, there's intermixing of the ball, but it's fine. But as a defender, I'm looking at that and I'm saying that's absolutely perfect out there, because no one's coming in here to give the ball inside to McBrearty or whoever it is, so there's not really as much of a threat. And I think teams are starting to realise, actually, instead of running around after them and chasing shadows, that if you keep the core, the central part of the pitch, relatively tight, well, then you should do okay, and especially in conditions like that. So, look, it was a good fill-up for Mayo to come back when they looked kind of dead and buried. They had a good few lads. It was good to have them get Doherty back, obviously, on the pitch and score a few points. But I don't think Donegal will be panicking that much at the moment.
All right, Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million.
No bother, lads. Talk to you soon.
A brilliant
Cheers.
picture on the back of the Irish Independent. Did you see this? It's Rob Henley and Paddy McBrearty having a little chat. Henley, cojones.
Trading, free taking, expertise. Some kick right at the end. Like, I mean, it's obviously after last year and the free against Dublin, you don't think that he can get much better than that. But I would say in just terms of the quality of the kick and how unexpected it was probably even a level above that.
Weather
Obviously not in the higher stakes, but
yeah. It'd be great to see them meet again. Wouldn't it be great if we could just fix the structure so they're anyway? Sure, look, why would we bother having a conversation about that? It's pointless. Why have people stopped talking about splitting Dublin in 4? Says John O'Brien. Has their population and funding reduced significantly recently? Oh, John. It's like, look at my winning argument here. Where as my team loses and disintegrates, at least I'm going to win the internet arguments.
Yeah.
Is that what it means to be a sports fan these days? I know, fair play. I still think that we should be looking at splitting Dublin. I think long term it's the only solution. It makes perfect sense. How can you have a population of 1 million up against whatever population of any of the other counties? You just can't. It doesn't make any sense into the future. It's about time you lads made an accurate assessment of Clare under the best manager in Gaelic football, promotion contenders, not relegation contenders. That's obviously aimed at you. You need to boost them up the power rankings. We're big fans of Clare.
Yeah,
no?
I think so. I would have thought so.
Ray says, fear for Dublin. What a time to be alive. Aina Carroll says, split Galway in 4. And Dennis Ryan says, the leagues are crying out for a Friday night live game.
He's not wrong. Could have easily been done as well, because it'd be a lot, especially those Ulster games in Division 1.
It was impossible to do. We were told the GPA were mad against it, but maybe things have changed. Yeah,
like, I mean, I would like to see the GPAs survey their players again and get a renewed take on it, because certainly when you've got any local derbies that exist in those divisions, and there's almost one a week at least, just put them on the Friday night to reduce travel time, and you immediately have another window, and it doesn't need to be a Division 1 game, believe it or not.
No, it would actually be better if it was a Division 3 and 4 game.
100%. People are not going to watch that. And I think, like, I mean, we've had this conversation around the club game. And the club game, while it's not doing inter-county numbers, it's done all right in terms of television figures. So I think this would make commercial sense too.
All right. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. It is 8:41. Let's hear a bit more from Tommy Freeman, who was watching Monaghan draw with the All-Ireland champions Tyrone yesterday, alongside our reporter Aisling O'Reilly.
But just as two teams, there's no love lost. There really isn't. You could tell that out on the pitch.
Definitely, Ashton. Even going back from my years, it was Monaghan Tyrone, big rivalry, and you know Tyrone had been a monkey of Monaghan's, a monkey in the back for many years, and you know. This last while we had overturned them, and you know, but last year it finished here all square, 14 points apiece in the league, and I was here doing commentary with the local radio station on that, and I thought that night Monaghan had the winning of it, but however, there's never too much between them now. This last 5 or 6 years, but you know, we'll do battle again, but yes, the rivalry is very much still there.
And looking ahead now, Monaghan and Mayo in the next game, so it'll be a big game there. They come up against the All-Ireland champions today and the runners-up as well, so it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, a tough game. You know, I was just saying over there, if you had to lose your first match, there'd be severe pressure. You know, you have to go and win your second match, or all of a sudden you could be facing relegation in the face. But, you know, we came away here, we got a result, you know, we got a point. We can't be too disappointed. We have to, you know, Banty, I'm sure, will, you know, get his team back to training now, recovery tomorrow night. To do a bit of video analysis during the week, tell them, you know, of course there's always something you can improve on Ashley and I, but you know, don't be too disappointed. We got a point, as I said, that point could be very important come the end of the league, but they'll be getting ready now for the men from the west, which is Mayo, that's in Clonus next Sunday, which will be another massive crowd of it, and one I'm looking forward to.
Okay, we're just going to update you on the latest situation with the Mason Greenwood story. I'll run you through the front page headlines. Manchester United star rape arrest, that's the front of the Irish Mirror this morning. And stay away Mason, shock arrest of England striker is the back page of the Mirror. Greenwood arrested for rape is the back page of the Irish Daily Mail. He's also pictured on the front of that one. It's on the front of the Herald this morning. Greenwood rape and assault arrest. Manchester United ace arrested for rape is the front cover of the Irish Sun. Social media shock, it says on that one. And Old Trafford shock, stay away. Greenwood is suspended by United after a rape arrest. And the front of the Star this morning is Manchester United star in rape arrest. Greenwood suspended by club. So I presume almost everybody at this point will be familiar with the story. Once an arrest is made, the reporting on the story becomes very restricted in terms of what can and can't be said. For example, you will notice that the identity of the woman in question who published this stuff on Instagram is no longer being spoken about in the newspapers because, again, once it goes to arrest, there's a very limited amount of what publications can actually say and what they can't say. So I'll run you through the statements yesterday. Obviously, the story evolved very quickly. The early statement from Manchester United was, "We are aware of images and allegations circulating on social media. We won't make any further comment until the facts have been established. Manchester United does not condone violence of any kind." Very quickly after that, though, the next statement came out from Manchester United saying Mason Greenwood will not return to training or play matches until further notice. In between, he had obviously been arrested. Greater Manchester Police were made aware earlier today of online social media images and videos posted by a woman reporting incidents of physical violence. An investigation was launched, and following inquiries, we can confirm a man in his 20s has since been arrested on suspicion of rape and assault. He remains in custody for questioning, and inquiries are ongoing. Nike also, one of Greenwood's sponsors, came out and said that they were deeply concerned by the disturbing allegations and they will continue to monitor the situation closely. The father of the woman in question had also confirmed in the meantime to the Daily Mail the veracity of the images, that they had indeed come from his daughter, that they were on her Instagram account. He speculated about how they'd gotten there and had said that they had urged her to take them down. However, it was clear that the woman in question had been a partner of Mason Greenwood's and had published those on her Instagram account, and that is the very latest situation. I suspect that until there is further details with regards to the police inquiries, you won't hear too much reporting of this from this point forward. But just wanted to cover that on the show this morning to make sure that you were up to date with exactly what was going on. It is 8:45. Let's take a clip from yesterday's discussion about sports books. Here is Sarah Donovan talking about why she picked Champagne Football as one of her favourite books.
Sarah, you picked it as well.
Yeah, so I was in Sicily a couple of years ago when the book was released, and I was sitting on a rock, absolutely immersed in the book, couldn't take my eyes off the book, and Aaron decided to propose. So John Delaney is going to be a forever part of my engagement story, fortunately or unfortunately. But I was part of the system back in the early 2000s with Ireland, and, you know, was one of the players in the airport changing their tracksuit at the airport. That kind of madness around the women's team and the lack of budgets. So for me to be reading the book and you know, reading that he's taking wads of cash out of bank links, you know, heading off on these trips, and there's no paper trail, it made me really angry. So the more I read, the more aggravated and cross I was, and the more I realised I should have been putting in much bigger expenses to the FAI when I was playing with Ireland.
Jeez, hell of a time to propose. I mean, you didn't throw the book at him or anything, did you?
I was just so distracted by the book that I looked around and there he was on bended knee, and I said, oh Jesus, is this happening? Right, I better put John away.
Let me finish the chapter, for God's sake.
I did wait until the following day to pick up the book, but it was in the back of my mind, so that's credit to the two authors that they managed to distract me that much.
Okay.
Yeah, Sarah O'Donovan and Gavin Cooney on with Joe Malloy yesterday, talking about their favourite sports books. You can get that full piece back on the OTB Sports app or on our YouTube account as well. You can go to youtube.com/off the ball. Delighted to welcome Ronan O'Gara back to the show. Ronan, how are you getting on?
Hey, on. Morning, Jar. Good, thank you.
5 days out from the Six Nations. Obviously, it's going to go to fever pitch over the next couple of days over here. Is the excitement in France at the same level in terms of this team in particular, the expectation that they'll go out and be favourites for this year's competition in the context of next year's World Cup as well?
Yeah, I think there's been obviously it's interesting to see, I suppose, the little bit of differences of opinion between the players. Obviously, everything is rehearsed nicely between the communications team in camp and the French team, where I think they were happy to assume the role of favourites, and then looking at a few interviews of players, they're there, well, why are we favourites? So they're saying that Ireland have beaten the All Blacks in November, before actually France beat the All Blacks. So a lot of people over here talking up Ireland, talking up England, but I think the common consensus would be that France are favourites. I think I was listening the other day on RMC, isn't it? The very good radio channel over here. France, I don't think have won the title in over 11 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't know actually.
Okay. Yeah, it was something. I was driving and I was like, whoa, that's. So they've never won the championship, I think, in 11 years. So they're obviously looking at this as a stepping stone to obviously the big party in 2023 is the Rugby World Cup in Paris. So they feel like this would be something that they need to do, most definitely, yes.
How good is this team at the moment, do you think?
Good, but I think it'll get better. There's no doubt about that. I think what they have, Ger, is that they have, for the first time, a huge competition for places. You look, even though obviously the outlier is obviously Dupont in the fact that he's such a good player at number 9, but even if he wasn't to play, they are just so stocked in that position. It's incredible. You look at the 3 scrum halves they have, and then there's fellas like Serran, imagine Cockett, whatever age he is, but anyone who understands rugby, Rory Cockett, to come into a team would be such an addition. There's Machino, there's Bézi, there's Ibrin, they have about 10 international class minimum scrum halves that can play, but obviously they've tried to hide behind the fact that the show goes on without Dupont, but I think it doesn't. He is that good, and you could even see it a little bit with Toulouse, the fact that he is such a good player that, his halfback partnership is Entimac, but Entimac can be covered by Jalibert, but there isn't really anyone in the world playing the game like Dupont.
And it seems that France have properly leaned into that as well, giving him the captaincy, accepting that, we don't mind putting the pressure on this guy's shoulders because he can absolutely handle it.
Yeah, I think it's probably because he does his basics so well, but where he excels is in broken play, I suppose. You know what I mean? There's that calm and the chaos in terms of counter-attack, turnover, ball. But I think so many people underestimate, I think, his strength and maybe also his probably capacity to anticipate space.
The age profile of those players who they've given experience to over the last couple of years is bubbling up nicely for the World Cup. How important is it that they continue to be successful in the meantime? Are they the type of team who we're going to see flourish once they start winning championships, and that actually that's the bit that is the secret sauce that takes them to like all-time great levels? Because that's what we're kind of thinking, that they have the selection of players to be one of the all-time great rugby teams.
I think you're a bit away from that, Ger. I think step by step, that's the fascinating aspect of the top level sport. It obviously is definitely in the last 2 inches that is defined, but in terms of ingredients putting together, I suppose, a formula or a plan, they most definitely have the raw ingredients to do that, but they're a long way away from I suppose, notching a few of those rungs on their belt. I think that they definitely have the players. They've definitely shown it in the last 12 months, but now this is a Six Nations where, they didn't win the Six Nations last year. It's more or less the same group. They are more experienced and more mature and more streetwise and a lot more full of confidence after a very good November because of what they did to New Zealand. But remember, 2 weeks previously, they struggled against Georgia with the same group. So like all other nations, I think they are really dependent on probably 5 or 6 players to really take them to that next level as well.
So that's why they do need to win this competition for their own kind of mentality and the fact that it would be a marker on the way that we're going the right direction.
Yeah, and I think also the way the fixtures lie, isn't it? They play Ireland and England. Is it in Stade de France?
Yeah.
Is it England in Stade de France? I'm not 100% sure on that. I thought it was. So they'll have tricky games against Scotland and Wales away. But
yeah, March 19th. The last game is France-England, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So they're like, but they start off with Italy, they'll get momentum from that game, then obviously bang, Ireland in Stade de France. But I mean, that'll be the game. I think that'll decide. Obviously, there's one of the teams going to be deflated after that weekend, and it's hard to call that game because France at home, I would say I would make them favourites with 80,000 people in Stade de France with the atmosphere that they get there. But I mean, if it's a really composed and accurate Ireland, they will cause problems for France. There's no doubt about that. And the fact that you can see, even with, I suppose, behavioural habits, that Ireland would be disciplined, their penalty count would be more consistently better, and that gives them always a great starting point in test matches. Where France's Achilles heel will be depending on who plays, and the fact that I don't think that discipline is part of their staple diet for the minute.
To just zoom out a little bit and talk about what this week is actually like in the build-up to the start of the Six Nations for the players, what's that curious mix of tension and excitement and expectation like when you feel like you have a squad who can do something special?
Yeah, it's very, very exciting. I think what is probably different in the 20 years preceding this is that the Heineken Cup formula has changed, and that has been a stable diet, I suppose, of so much success for Ireland down throughout the years with 6 pool games played. It's 4 games. There's COVID. There's a lot of variables thrown into the pot at this stage. But I think it shows that the competition for places is absolutely crucial, in the fact that for example, Gibson Park will start at 9, but he knows that he has Conor Murray coming at him. He knows that there's another 9 in camp. You look at the centres, it's very, very hard to pick the Irish centres. It's very hard to pick the Irish back row. And I think that's extremely important, because what is most definitely shifting, it's not a 15-man game, it becomes a 23-man game. And for a 23-man game, what you really need, is that you need that kind of difficult discussion or debate to go, well, how do I get 30 to 23? If you're trying to get 23 to 15, I think you're already behind.
How are we doing at that, do you think?
In the fact, I think like in my day, probably you would have started your strongest team. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I like coaches that probably look to finish a test game with their strongest team, or their club game with the strongest team, and the fact that you have to have 23 guys and their roles of the finishers, which Eddie Jones made very, very famous with that saying, but deciders, finishers, impact players, whatever way you want to do it, there's a huge skill involved in that. Because I suppose before, traditionally in sport, when I was probably brought up, it was maybe the subs were there to take the place of a guy who started and given his all. Nowadays, actually, the guy who's coming on has to add something more than the guy he's replaced. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult for their team to get over the line, because you're at test level, it's decided by little tiny margins. And I think there's a skill also too, and some people have a great capacity to watch a game and know where they'll make a difference. And that's what experience is. You see guys that have, the capacity in the second row or line-out callers to have an iPod in their possession in a live game. You will see halfbacks, 9s and 10 watching game in terms of where's the game being played? Am I playing too much in my half? Or is it a game where the ref is really rewarding the team for holding possession, which means the ball is king? So play a phase game. So there's little subplots that are evident throughout the whole 80 minutes. But I think the role of the substitute isn't to listen to his fitness coach and make sure he's ready to go in. He has a role where he has to kind of observe and then make an impact.
And when you say there that observation is helped by experience, does that ever influence your decisions when you're thinking about the type of player to start and the type of player to have on the bench? As in, I don't know, for example, if there were to be like a tie call between a young player and a more experienced player, that actually the younger player can feel his way into the game, the more experienced player can be that finisher who can study the game using his experience to come in and actually make that difference a bit better than the youngster, for example.
Well, yeah, I think there's a perfect example already in the current game of that. When you look at France in November, they experimented with Jalibert, Ntamack 10-12, but I think they've probably... or not probably, they've definitely decided that they won't start games with that, but it becomes so appealing after 50 minutes when you launch Jalibert, be it from 10 or from 15 against fatiguing defences. His acceleration in the position of first receiver, second receiver is phenomenal, and his capacity, I suppose, to take on defences that are tiring, be it after half time or be it at the end of a game, is a huge advantage. You look at it in an Irish context, and I know he's not involved in an international setup, but like someone like Sean Cronin is an absolute perfect example as an impact player, because I think what he can do against his, I suppose, carry game and his acceleration after 50 minutes in a test match was always hugely interesting. So coaches would have been, oh yeah, I'd like to keep him in reserve because I think he can do damage when I suppose the defensive wall has been battered a bit. But starting a game is very, very different, and that's where I think people who play understand the fact that you do damage sometimes in a test game in the last 12 minutes, in the last 6 minutes, in the last 3 minutes. It's very, very rare nowadays that you kind of have a team that scores, reception, kickoff, score, completely control, I suppose, the scoreboard for 80 minutes. There's always games where it's kind of the lead changes, it goes over and back, but then after 60, the real game kind of begins.
Is that where somebody like Mike Lowry might be able to make an impact from an Ireland perspective, where he has that blistering pace and it might be the last 15 minutes, and it could be very frustrating for him that that's the only involvement he ever gets in big games, but that could be the winning and losing of matches?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Sure, you can see. I think also too, though, to see what he did to Para in that try he scored on the outside break against Claremont. Very few people over 15 years have done that. So for me, that's an exceptional bit of footwork. And if Para doesn't get embarrassed or hasn't got embarrassed like that before, to my recollection. So I think Lowry's feet there, or acceleration, or his capacity to do that is hugely significant. The other side of it, when you're creating a team, is the fact that, yeah, you have Lowry there on the bench for the last 15 minutes, but if something happens, Johnny after 7 minutes, that means Lowry defending probably the 10 channel for 73 minutes, which at Test Rugby is difficult, but it's not a reason not to happen. But for all your planning to, in a dream scenario where, yeah, I launch him with 20 to go and he can do huge damage, you got to understand that there's also the risk reward and the fact that you can't really call or preview what's going to happen for the first 60, and that's where you need, I suppose, your plan to come to fruition, that you're kind of getting 50, 60 minutes out of your starters. But we know at this level there's always kind of a high ball contest that's can potentially end in a leg break. There's collisions, there's high shots, there's carnage at Test level.
Clash of heads, traditionally, we have our two centres like to tackle the same place. It's happened on numerous occasions where they've banged their heads early in games and either or both of them has to go off. Yeah, exactly. Because that's life sport. You can't say it's Yummy Bundyaki Henshaw, Bundyaki Ringrose gone. I have one last question on that then, right? So is the ideal scenario between now and the World Cup where we get to a point where Sexton is on the bench and somebody else has started and he is your reserve 10? No, I don't think so, because in the form he's in at the minute, I think the team plays differently when he plays. So I think the Six Nations, I think the opportunity with Wales and France, I think that's Johnny time, and then I think you review after those first two games. I think there are
huge significance in terms of if you're playing on a winning team or a team under pressure, especially if you're not the proven number 10, if you understand me, Jerry, you know. So I think you got to set up these guys at 10. The next, I suppose, the Joey Carberrys, the Harry Burns, the whoever is after that, Ross Byrne, to succeed.
Are you throwing Robert Balakoon straight into the starting mix for the Wales game this weekend?
I'm not too sure what I said in the Examiner. Did I say for the Wales game or the Italy game?
I can't remember. It was some,
you can change your mind. It doesn't matter.
I wasn't even on the back of the Examiner, Ronan. Sorry.
I think I am putting him in this weekend. Yeah, I think I probably have him and Keith Earls on the wing. I just think that I think, with all due respect, I think he'll probably thrive against Italy, but I think Wales is a far tougher test. While for a young player going to Twickenham or going to Stade de France in his first big Six Nations start, that's a tough ask. Starting in New Zealand is a tougher ask, but I think what you want to do is you want to see him shine to a certain extent against Wales. Yes, he'll have errors. He's a new player. He's raw, he's aggressive, he's unorthodox. He can do a lot of things a lot of other wingers can't do. So I think this would be a great one to give him a bit of confidence and then hopefully take his game to another level. If he does well, you keep him going, keep him rolling, and then it becomes probably a great bit of competition when James Lowe comes back into the squad.
We had Jonathan Davis on the show last week, and he very, very quickly fell into this description of Welsh rugby being in a complete state of crisis at the moment, that they're not getting young players through, they're not bringing creativity through, and that the medium term is pretty bleak. And yet we would have said the same thing this time last year when we were writing Wales off, who then went on to win the championship. So is there an ambush coming from Wales? Should we be a bit concerned about that, or is there a lot of truth in that?
Yeah, I listened to Jonathan's interview. He's a very interesting guy, and I think you have to always respect Wales because of what they've done in the championship. You know what I mean? For so many years, or ever since the inception of the Champions Cup, their club teams are non-existent in that competition, but they become completely transformed when they put on a red jersey. That's a matter of fact now. So I think they know, in terms of, I suppose, this periodization or timing, this is what they try for. This is their everything this next 2 months. So for February and March, they become possessed, and their record in the Six Nations warrants massive respect. Bottom line.
Yeah. Do you still expect Ireland to win this game this weekend?
I do, because it's Ireland in the Viva that's full of confidence. I think that has a pep in its step, that has a greater appreciation of how they want to play the game in terms of forwards and backs. I think they have a huge advantage in the front row. I think Ireland, the quality of the front row is superior, I think, to what Wales have, and I think they have a great appreciation of space now, but they also have great appreciation of running lines, and I think they're mixing their game up. But to expect one-way traffic, I think, would be a huge error.
So a close game, Ireland to win. And then in terms of the actual championship itself, who are your favourites? Who are going to win it?
Well, obviously, I don't know who's going to win it, but I think France, probably for me, are the coming team.
Yeah. Okay. We're sending Eoin to Wales this week to try and make amends for the amount of insults that we hurled their general direction last year. He's our sacrificial lamb. Have you any advice for him? I don't know if you've got.
You love Cardiff, Ronan.
He's hoping for this to go viral, isn't it? Was this when did we last see this? At Japan, was it the Rugby World Cup?
Yeah.
This will be good. This will be good viewing. I like it.
He's big in Japan. He's a YouTube star there.
You won't find many drunk people in Wales anyway, between Ireland and... Oh no, sorry, it's not. You're going to Wales.
He is, yeah, to make peace.
Okay, yeah, but she's going to get some good interviews too.
Yeah, 100%. I'm there to do good work, Ronan. I don't know why. I don't know why there's like a tone from Jar here in studio. That's it. That's
Make sure you go to Swansea as well.
Say that again.
make sure you go to Swansea.
Make sure to go to why? Because the rugby heartlands around Swansea is
correct. Yeah, and the nightlife, you'll enjoy it. It's a different world there. It'll be. I can remember we played a game at Racing, wasn't it, one time, and we were all with the French boys, and we had our blazers and stuff on after a game against the Ospreys, and we went to Swansea for dinner. It was middle of January, I think, 1 degree outside, but all the French boys were kind of got off the bus, and they saw everyone else, and there was very little attire on both the guys and the ladies in the middle of January at 10 o'clock at night. They were like, oh my God, what, are we in the Canaries? So that's some story that always remains with me, that they weren't dressed for the weather, that's for sure.
Not too many blazers made at home, I'd say, either.
No, the French were they were choqués. On est choqués. They were shocked.
Ronan, good stuff. Thanks a million.
See ya. Cheers.
Take care. Ronan O'Gara with the good tourist information there, Ronan. From your perspective, you don't have a plan to go to Swansea at the moment. You were strictly Cardiff only.
Well, you see, as anybody who knows their Welsh geography will know, trying to get meaningful time in different areas of Wales is a hard thing to do. Without basing yourself in Cardiff, you can go up. If you base yourself in Cardiff, you can go up to the valleys. And I mean, ever since the MTV hit show, it's always been my dream to go to the valleys. So how do you get there and also get to Swansea in only a couple of days? Well, I guess greater achievements have been accomplished. So we'll see if we can pull it off.
Cardiff just beat Leinster. A bit of foreshadowing. Are you scared yet? Says somebody whose name is Kim Roo on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, I mean that certainly struck a bit of fear into me.
It's quite the flex though, calling you just like Wales in Welsh.
Yeah,
that's my YouTube name.
Yeah,
you speak on behalf of the entire Welsh nation,
as each Welsh person does.
I mean, look, I'm looking forward to meeting all our Welsh brethren in Dublin this weekend and having a few light ales with them. Hello.
It was probably this day last year, or certainly this Monday last year, where we did our bit on Wales. It was obviously our performance/pressure rankings at the time, and we did a list of things that are under most pressure, and Wales were very much in a high pressure scenario, and we said that Wales shouldn't be included in this year's Six Nations, and Wales Online picked it up. So yeah, happy 1 year anniversary to all of our new Welsh friends.
Well, I mean, if for example we'd won that game, would they have gone on to win the Six Nations? It's hard to know, because they were flaky as heading into it. It turns out we overvalued their November performance. We were unaware of the fact that they don't really care about November. It doesn't happen. For whatever reason, November does not exist in the Welsh sporting calendar.
They have exactly what we don't have.
It's 11 minutes past 9. If you want to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with the new and improved razors. Mike Carlson is on standby. We'll get to him after these.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Sport is so fickle, and you know this more than anyone, Quinny. Like, you're either on top of the world or you're down in the doldrums.
Munster legends Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs are joining forces to bring you all the latest analysis, news, interviews and so much more.
Him going back to Japan was probably more acceptable for people, but him going to bat might frustrate a few people, disappoint a few people.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the Rugby channel on the OTB SPORTS app and turn on your notifications now.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, Mike Carlson is with us to talk about a fairly sensational Super Bowl pairing where Joe Burrow will bring the Bengals to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. Mike, good morning to you. How are you?
A little bit bleary, but otherwise fine.
Well, let's start with what happened in the first game, where the Bengals overcome a 21-3 deficit to win against the Kansas City Chiefs in Kansas, where it looked like Patrick Mahomes was, stratospherically unbelievable in that first half. And then what happened?
Well, it was a game of two halves, wasn't it? And it was strange because what happened at the end of the first half, Kansas City was positioned to extend the lead. They had a first and goal at the 4 with about 10 seconds left. And you remember the week before, everyone had been praising them for getting in 13 seconds, getting downfield and kicking a field goal to tie the game and send it into overtime. And Andy Reid, whose clock management had always been a bugaboo throughout his career, was getting praised. And they managed to get away with no points from that possession. On the last play with 4 seconds, I think it was 4 seconds left, maybe 5, Patrick Mahomes threw a pass to Tyreek Hill on the field of play, and he got tackled, and they couldn't stop the clock, which was kind of an elementary level mistake. And Andy Reid, I think, took the blame for the play call itself, but to throw the ball was a basic mistake. So they didn't even get a field goal out of it in the whole play calling. Then they came out in the second half, and a very strange set of plays happened after they couldn't move on the first possession. They got the ball back on a punt, and McCall Hardman signaled for a fair catch on the punt. When he caught it, someone ran into him face to face with the helmet, and after a second's hesitation, he did a dive worthy of Spanish football, and there was no penalty flag. And fair catch interference is sort of the most simple black and white call in the book. You hit the guy and it's a penalty. 2 plays later, Hardman catches a pass out of bounds, and he's hit out of bounds, which is another pretty obvious penalty, and no flag was called there. So I think his acting probably convinced them not to. From that point on, Kansas City could not generate any offense. It was amazing because when they played the Bengals in the regular season just 3 weeks before, they had done the same thing. They couldn't score in the second half. The Bengals came back and beat them. And all that you can say is that the Bengals, after allowing Kansas City a fairly free run offensively in the first half, took Tyreek Hill out of the game in the second half. And Patrick Mahomes couldn't compensate. He, as you said, he looked off in that second half. His throws were as if he were trying to place them. He didn't have any sort of decisiveness in what he was doing. And meanwhile, Cincinnati's offense was relentless, and Joe Burrow, playing without fear, I think, took them to into overtime and then a win. And everyone was moaning about overtime last week. That the offense chance to play, they didn't give him a chance. Well, as I said then, they gave him a chance. All you have to do is stop it. Your defense is just as much a part of the team as your offense is. The Bengals stopped them on a terrible 3-play series. They really looked pathetic. And then the Bengals marched right down and kicked the field goal.
So what happens to the Chiefs' offense then? Why did they look so terrible? Why did they end up in a place in the most important part of the game with a terrible 3 downs?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could tell you. I know that the Bengals stopped playing their safeties so deep to take away Tyreek Hill and started trying to take away the middle of the field, which is something that you do have to do. The lesser receivers didn't really step up. It was a very loosely called game, and there were only 6 penalties in the whole game, and there was an awful lot of let them play kind of moments in the secondary. But none of that explains the hesitancy it looked like that Patrick Mahomes was playing with. And I don't know, did he take a hit during the game? Did he come out of halftime flat because he just thought it would be inevitable that they came back, or not that they came back, but that they would extend. I can put my finger on a couple of things that the Bengals did to help themselves, but I can't figure out why Mahomes was so ineffective.
Oh, just having some trouble with Mike's line there. We might try and reestablish it in a second, but if you're just waking up this morning, if you missed it, the LA Rams won by a field goal, coming back from a double-digit deficit at home against the San Francisco 49ers to book their place in the Super Bowl. It'll be a second home Super Bowl. It's in their stadium in Los Angeles, and they will be playing Joe Burrow's Cincinnati Bengals. I wish it was the 49ers. I think we've got Mike back. Yeah, Mike, you're back there. Let's move on.
Yeah, I'm back. I guess my computer was up all night and it just wasn't up to it.
I can understand. Let's talk about the Rams. The Rams went all in and have had a habit of going all in on big trades. They traded for Ramsey. They traded in the off-season for the quarterback that they thought was going to take them to a new level. They essentially took a bit of a bath on their old quarterback and his contract. And then mid-season they went in on OBJ and they went in on Von Miller, and they will never have a draft pick again, but they don't care because they've got a Super Bowl at home in their own stadium, and it's a different way of team building, and it paid dividends in the fourth quarter last night.
Yeah, I think really one of the real keys for the Rams was Odell Beckham. They had gone 7 wins, 1 loss when Robert Woods was playing, and when Robert Woods got hurt, they went 5-4 the rest of the season. But Odell Beckham, who they had picked up after Woods got hurt, was sort of integrating himself into the team. Cooper Kupp had stepped up brilliantly, had a real MVP type season, which is unusual. You could even be saying that for a wide receiver. But Beckham was really good in this game and made the catches when he had to. Kupp was great as well. And you think, well, Kupp's the first guy that you want to stop, but the Niners couldn't stop him. And I don't want to sound like I'm raining on their parade, but there are a couple of things to note in this game. One is that Matt Stafford tried his best to throw it away by throwing a sure interception, underthrowing a ball that Jaquiski Tart of the Niners bounced off his chest, basically, and should have intercepted it, which could have changed the game right there. The second one is they did not call. If you're like me and you like watching the line, the most obvious person to watch is the right tackle on the offensive line, which is the left defensive end, who's usually the other team's best pass rusher, and Nick Bosa in this case against Rob Habenstein. That takes place right in front of the referee, who's usually aligned to the quarterback's right. Not a single flag was thrown. There was a play where Habenstein tackled Bosa twice on the same play. He tackled him, Bosa got up and started chasing Matt Stafford, and he tackled him again by grabbing his leg and pulling him down. No penalties the whole game. If you're not going to let the Niners front rush properly, they're going to lose, because the weakness of their team is the back four. The strength is the front seven defensively. And I think that had a huge effect on the game. It made the Rams better. But in fairness, the Niners had, like the Chiefs, had some crazy decisions of their own. And in the fourth quarter, the last 2 series that they got the ball, needing to do something, still obviously in the game. It's a 3-point game. It's a tied game, and then it's a 3-point game when they get the ball. And Jimmy Garoppolo, at that point, his protection started breaking down. His offensive line was obviously gashed. Trent Williams, the tackle, could barely move. And Garoppolo was just awful. They had 2 really, the second one ending in action. Both times they were going backwards, not forwards. So the Rams defense in the end, I think, made the difference in this game. But and Jalen Ramsey is part of that acquisition of big stars that they mortgaged their future to get. But I thought they were the key. They stopped the running game early. Deebo Samuel didn't really, and Elijah Mitchell didn't really do much running the ball. If you turn the 49ers into a drop-back passing team, they're not that good. That's not Jimmy Garoppolo's strength. His strength is playing in a kind of rollout offense where his reads are defined for him, and he can just kind of put the ball where it's supposed to be. He didn't do that very often. I think that's pretty much why the Niners lost. The game turned out about the way most of us thought it would be, a really close game that either team could win. And in the end, that star-studded lineup and Aaron Donald should get the mention. He's the homegrown star, but he's still the best defensive tackle in the NFL, and he showed why. Yeah, good stuff, Mike. Thanks a million. We have a couple of weeks to preview the Super Bowl. Great to have you with us. Thanks okay, great. See you then. That's Mike Carlson. So it's going to be the Bengals at the Rams in the Super Bowl. There you go. The Niners were 80-1 7 or 8 weeks ago
to win the whole thing.
Yeah, no, it was like it would have been a good bet, but you would have had to lay off last night before
Yeah, it would have been a good bet. Like, I mean, if you bet €5 on it, you would have lost €5.
Well, I mean, they were obviously much shorter price when they were 10 points up last night. So, anyway, it is 9:23. It's time for Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and after my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it. What have I done? Like I walked into a circus.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Phil Egan has his metaphorical yellow tie on. Phil, good morning to you.
How are you doing, lads?
This is the final day. It's come upon us pretty quickly.
Yeah, under the radar, even though that's bizarre because there's been no Premier League games for the last week. So
there's nothing been,
there hasn't been too many big deals happening. Obviously, the one that happened over the weekend was Liverpool completed the Luis Diaz move. And yeah, the transfer window will slam shut. Isn't that the right terminology? At 11 o'clock.
It's 11 o'clock. I was going to ask,
Yeah, midnight for Scottish clubs.
Didn't they have a 5 o'clock cut off one year? I was like, what are you doing? What's the point of that?
Yeah. You got to get your primetime TV.
You've made up this thing and then you've made it bad. Mm-hmm. Like, make this made up thing go into the evening.
Like, exactly. It's all at 9 o'clock when nobody is signing for Everton. That's when you really know that the pulse will start to quicken, and it's good that we're back to 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I remember even there was a stage where the Premier League had a different close to the rest of Europe, and that was just shambolic stuff.
Yeah,
they weren't happy with that.
No, sure, it made a mockery of it all.
A mockery of the already slightly ridiculous thing. Let's just briefly talk about that Liverpool transfer. What difference does this make to the team? Straight into the side. Unusual for them to be doing business. It's not that unusual for them to be doing business, but was one of those situations, again, a little bit like Jota, where no one knows anything about it. Boom, it's happened.
Yeah, and look, he is a player. We talked about him last week when he was being linked with the move to Tottenham, but he's continuously been linked with Liverpool, and you could see how he would fit into a 4-3-3 system. And it sounds like Liverpool just moved quickly because they realised Porto were willing to do a deal with Tottenham, and they liked the looks of the deal, and they thought, we can do this. And the player clearly wants to go to Liverpool ahead of Tottenham. Jurgen Klopp FaceTimes him, seals the deal, and that's the power of Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool right now, that if he wants a player, they're going to go and play for him.
Yeah, he's a happier character than Antonio Conte to play for, isn't he? Conte's FaceTime and you're like, okay, is there anybody else I could go? I mean, unless you actually want a little bit of tough love in your life.
Yeah, and at the moment though, Liverpool are a far better team than Tottenham, so that whole argument about geographical location where players want to come to London rather than go to the likes of Liverpool or Manchester, that when Liverpool are going so well at the moment, then he's obviously going to... And he
well, the only thing about that is, will he play? They are going so well at the moment, so the follow-on from that is like, how do I get in this team?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure Luis Diaz is confident enough to think, yeah, I've played against Liverpool and I can see exactly how they play, where I'm going to play. It just gives Liverpool more options in attack, because obviously they've been short of them in January with the 3 players, were 2 attackers going to the Africa Cup of Nations. They're still there, obviously. Salah and Mane might even meet in the final. But Mane, as good as he's been for Liverpool, there's been a little drop off in maybe the amount of goals that he scored. He still forms a really good partnership down the left hand side with Andy Robertson, but there is definitely scope for Diaz to start there. But also it just gives Klopp another option, and he can play in other positions as well. So it's about adding strength and depth, because I know Divock Origi is a bit of a cult hero at Liverpool, but he is just not good enough in terms of when the likes of Salah and Mane are not on the team. The drop-off is too much, and that's what Liverpool are trying to do. They're trying to make sure that if their best players are out, that they have ready-made replacements to go in. Jota obviously fits into that category. Look how well he performed in January. The talk is that Origi and Minamino will leave. Don't know if it's going to happen today. Minamino has been linked with moves to Leeds and Monaco, but maybe he's thinking, I've got a League Cup to win. I got Liverpool to the final. It's time to finish this. Myself and Queeveen, we deserve our shot in the League Cup final. But Origi, I always felt Liverpool should have sold him after the Champions League success. That was the best price they were going to get from him.
Yeah.
But then, every so often, he comes off the bench against
his existence.
Yeah, against Wolves, scores that late goal, and you think the guy is a cult hero for Liverpool.
And he gets his hug off Jurgen Klopp, and all feels well in his life again.
And Klopp basically says, I don't understand why he's still here. It's ridiculous. I never play him except for these moments. Anybody else would leave.
This guy has got an unbelievable capacity for torture.
Yeah. It's like, okay, I see what you're doing there, Jurgen.
Yeah, so Liverpool also, I mean, the talk is that they're going to try and get Fabio Carvalho deal done. This teenager from Fulham who played underage for England, born in Portugal, out of contract in the summer. So they could wait till then, but the talk is that they want to maybe get it done, but there's a bit of a stumbling block with the price, whereas Liverpool are saying to Fulham, well, you know, this guy is going to be available for free in the summer.
And I think they are sweetening the deal by offering him to stay with Fulham to the end of the year.
And obviously Fulham are going pretty well, and they're on course to get back to the Premier League to replace Watford and Norwich as the team that come back up and go back down. And
okay, Newcastle are still being linked with a slew of players, some of which are going to happen and some of which won't happen. So they've been linked with Target at Villa, who obviously has lost his place and probably won't get back in that team unless there's an injury, and didn't seem to have Steven Gerrard's full trust anyway. They're being linked with Dean Henderson. Is this a possibility?
Possibly. I mean, is Dean Henderson that much better than Dubravka? Now, Dubravka a couple of years ago was in much better form, has had a few injuries and hasn't been as convincing as he was a couple of years ago, where I kind of thought to myself, he should be playing at a better club than Newcastle, but now he's playing for the richest club in the world. So Dean Henderson obviously stayed at United. Everyone thought, yeah, he's going to take over from De Gea, but then the more we saw of him, we realised De Gea is still better than him. And because Dean Henderson is English, he probably got talked up a bit more. Dean Henderson was quite, he's quite a confident lad as well. But I always think back to that game at Old Trafford with United and Liverpool, where Salah was running through and Dean Henderson stood at one side of the goal basically and said, there you go, Mo, if you just want to knock it into an empty net there. It was like he lost his bearings and just didn't know exactly what he was doing. But I think when you're at a club like Manchester United, the more you play, then obviously the spotlight is on you. And yeah, you could see that he's a good keeper, but I never thought he was good enough to be Manchester United's number one. Would he be the difference of Newcastle staying up? I don't think he would make that big a difference. I think they need to strengthen in other departments, and they're obviously being linked with a load of players. So
yeah, and they've got a few in since we last spoke. They now have a better midfield. They now have a better centre back. They're strengthening the spine of the team, right?
Yeah. It seems like goalkeeper is like the one area where they not only have a good starter, but they have depth as well. I mean, like as far as substitute goalkeepers go, it's Carl Darlow who's on the bench at the moment, who was good when he was playing last season. Maybe that's the home for if people are if the scouts and the agents who are pushing the story out there, maybe they know more than the rest of us know about the quality of the Dubravka. Maybe himself and Darlow actually aren't all that, and maybe that's your home for Caoimhín Kelleher when he gets assigned to a club next season.
We don't want that.
Have the Newcastle signings influenced where you think they're going to finish?
I still think they'll stay up.
Right.
Yeah. It looks like they're trying to get Dan Byrne signed, which actually should be good news for Shane Duffy. That takes Dan Byrne out of the Brighton team, and he's been in that
pretty cheap, like 10-15 million.
Yeah,
they're haggling over that price.
Yeah, and he's 29 as well. Now he spent a bit of time at Newcastle as a youth team player. He's a Newcastle fan, so he obviously wants to go back there. The Target deal looks like it's going to get done, and then maybe Lingard is another move that they're trying to get done. This is a day, like Newcastle is the day when you need the fans beside the Sky reporter.
This is your Super Bowl, Newcastle fans.
Yeah, but it's obviously not happening now because someone ruined it by sticking something in somebody's ear.
A purple dildo, you can say it.
Okay.
Was there not like was there not a few good years post purple dildo, or was purple dildo the final straw?
I'm not sure. I think COVID killed it, and they're
it was done before COVID.
Well done.
Was it?
COVID. Yeah, it was.
Oh, okay. I thought they had. Right.
What they do now is to get into the training ground, isn't it?
Why do they care about it? Is that not like if you were a TV executive and Purple Dildo shows up, you're like, this is it, my work here is done.
Yeah.
This is going to go viral. That's 6 million views. People are going to be tuning into this for years to come.
It is one of the great David Squires sketches where the Sky Sports reporter goes to school, goes to college, takes a family photo with him graduating from journalism school, and then the final square is him getting a purple dildo shoved in his ear.
Donny van de Beek is going to join. I don't know why that segue made everybody laugh, but it did. Donny van de Beek will join Everton on loan, but no buy option will be included in the deal, according to a number of sources. Will he shine for Lampard's Toffees, or is there a reason why both Solskjaer and Rangnick have overlooked him?
Yeah, like we don't know how good Donny van de Beek is anymore because he doesn't play. And even though United put up on their socials there last month that congratulations to Donny van de Beek for reaching 50 appearances.
50 appearances.
But how many starts? Very few.
How many minutes? Like an average of 8-9 minutes over those 50 appearances?
It's a tough one because this is a guy that grew up at the Ajax Academy. What do Ajax base their game on? It's all about possession football. United haven't been as controlled in possession as an Ajax team would be. He's obviously been a bit part player, and
he'd have been as well to go back to Ajax in the hope that Ten Hag gets the gig.
Yeah.
Or whatever gig Ten Hag gets, he re-establishes himself as somebody who Ten Hag believes in and says, right, bring me with you.
And there was talk as well at Crystal Palace, and that probably would have been a better move for him as well because there's less pressure at Palace. Obviously, Conor Gallagher's in midfield there as well. Vieira, a quality midfielder in his day. So he could have learned plenty off him. Look, I'm sure he'd learn plenty off Frank Lampard, but it's going to be. I know Manchester United's a highly pressurised environment to be in, but Everton is going to be the same. Where they're only 4 points above the relegation zone. Lampard's taking on the role, and Everton need to start winning games. Whereas if you went to Crystal Palace, expectations aren't as high, and he'd probably enjoy it a bit more. He needs to start enjoying his football again because it's just been miserable for him.
We've got less than a minute left for all of these. Ousmane Dembele, who's still only 24, is being heavily linked with a move to PSG, although there is some link with Manchester United that's still floating around. The PSG deal sounds like it's much further down the line according to what everybody's saying at the moment. Can he still be a player of importance on the global stage, or has the injury profile ruined him? Is he now Michael Owen, aged 24 to 30? Is that what we should expect for Dembele, or can he still be somebody who is as good as we thought he could be?
I don't know if he was ever going to be as good as he was meant to be. He had that really good season at Dortmund, and all of a sudden Barca came in with ridiculous money, which is why Barca are in such a situation that they are now. And
okay, so you're not buying it?
I think he's going to be fine, and he'll have moments, and he hasn't. It doesn't look like he's lost that pace, but I think PSG will be fine for him, where he'll win titles and
maybe not have to play every minute, and could can help in
get
that
back
environment.
Into the French squad as well.
Maybe.
Probably, yeah.
Aubameyang expect to take a massive pay cut to swap Arsenal for Barcelona if they can get Dembele off their books. So this is all part of the merry-go-round at the moment. How do you feel, Eoin? Aubameyang and his silver Batmobile?
Be great, wouldn't it? That'd be a great piece of business by Arsenal if he was willing to take that pay cut, because we've seen not only with Arsenal but a number of clubs in the upper echelons of the Premier League just getting destroyed by these contracts.
Pay cuts don't really happen. They give him a certain amount of money and then Barcelona pick up as far as I know. Now, why would you take a pay cut? It's like,
but at least on another level, then it's just this being outside the dressing room at this point, not having that cloud hanging over the club. Mikel Arteta will be asked less about it. It will be better if Aubameyang was still scoring goals at the rate he was a couple of seasons ago. Like 22 goals in back-to-back Premier League seasons was a very good return. He was a good signing, and it's just ended desperately badly.
Basically, as soon as he dotted the I's and crossed the T's in his new contract,
he went off a cliff.
It was unbelievable.
I mean, he must have been getting paid very well before that, though. So it's not like it's the first time he's ever had money or anything.
No.
Right, last one. Christian Eriksen's a Brentford player. That's a done deal. Is there a world where he can make a big impact, Phil?
Yeah, I mean, look, I hope it goes well for him. Obviously, the Danish connections with Brentford, and they do have a lot of importance on set pieces. So Eriksen should be a good addition to them. And if you told me 7 months ago that he'd be back playing in the Premier League, I wouldn't have believed you. So it is great news to see him back, and it's a nice start to the day anyway, because one of the first deals announced. And actually, it didn't even need to be done today because he's a free agent anyway.
Yeah, but the miracle of modern science is something we should all be very grateful for. That's today's Deal or No Deal.
I signed for them after the Euros, and After my first day's training, I was driving home. I was actually thinking, regretting it, what have I done? Like I walked into a circus. It's amazing, isn't it?
OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Kimmery's back in touch to say, haha, yes, Rog, up a Swansea. I am the official spokesman of our people. I'll be in Dublin to see you. Maybe you could hook Eoin up with some good Swansea flesh pots for the midweek.
What was the word you used there?
Up a Swansea.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Do please get in touch, Kimmery. I'll be glad to hear from you.
Carl Darty says, Connacht fan here. Shocking how much we rely on 2 or 3 players that get selected for the Irish camp. Hard to know if any of them will get game time, if it's a good thing. Dahio Shocknasig says, interesting if Mike Carlson thinks this will be the end of Jimmy Garoppolo at the 49ers. 100% it's the end of Garoppolo. All the other teams at this stage of the competition have quarterbacks that they have spent a lot, invested in, or drafted high, and that's not what the 49ers have, so they're getting rid of Jimmy, and he said it himself. But I wish him all the best. This multimillionaire who looks like one of the most handsome men on the planet. Everybody feels a bit sorry for him today because he had a sore shoulder and a sore thumb and played through the pain barrier. Powell74 says the 49ers lost to discipline and gave the Rams opportunities when they looked lost. The Bengals to win with Burrow as they know what they're about and they're better coached. I'm not sure about that. Andy Reid has a history of choking. Mahomes is no Brady. He won't win half of what the GOAT won. Well, he's got another 17 years to go. Sam White says, lads, stop dodging Newcastle signings. Also, a word on Ericsson joining Brentford. What a story. Henderson ain't coming, by the way. And Dennis Ryan says, Dan Byrne pretty cheap at 10 to 15 million. Lads, the game is definitely gone. Join us tomorrow from 7:30. We'll talk to the Australian Open with Catherine Murphy in Melbourne. We'll have a reaction to the end of the transfer window, rugby and GA as well. Right now, some more rugby. Alan Dimmock joined Joe yesterday to look at how Scotland, England and Wales are shaping up ahead of the Six Nations.
Alan Dimmock is with us, features editor at Rugby World magazine. Alan, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me.
We wanted to get a non-Irish perspective as we begin to build up. So I presume you're Scottish is your main area of focus at the moment. Six Nations 2021, an odd Six Nations for Scotland in some respects. 4th behind Wales, France and Ireland, 3 wins, 2 losses. And yet the wins, in particular England at Twickenham and then Paris, are real high points of the last 20 years. So how did Scotland feel about the Six Nations of 21?
Yeah, positive, but it's being Scottish, you always look for the grey lining and everything, and there were wins, big wins, and some of that form was carried on through November as well. Big scalps there, beating Australia, for example. But Scots, you're always going to struggle with this one. So, for example, this Six Nations starts with the Calcutta Cup. England have won once out of 4 against Scotland, but still, if you were to ask people on the street what do they expect from that game, I don't know, there's always that air of pessimism. However, what an absolute cracker of a game to start with, that one.
Yeah, to remind people of the flow of last year, because we rarely talk about Scotland, and it's amazing, even in the general previews we did last week with various people, talked a lot about Ireland, obviously, a bit about the situation in the Welsh regions. England are always interesting, and France are the coming force, and Scotland, we're running out of time, we don't quite get to them. So last year they were 11 points to 6 winners against England. That was at Twickenham. That was when it became very apparent the English Saracens boys were not fit, and Cameron Redpath burst on the scene. I think Stuart Hogg had a great game. Eoin van der Merwe got a try. Obviously he was going to go on and play for the Lions that summer. And then Scotland 24, Wales 25. They really coughed that one up. They were in a great position and made a mess of it. Round 3 against France was postponed. Then they lost to Ireland 24-27. Henshaw Byrne with the tries for Ireland. Beat Italy in round 5. And then the rescheduled match in Paris, 27 points to 23 winners against France. Van der Merwe with the 2 tries. And you mentioned November, where they beat Tonga, they beat Australia, they lost to South Africa, and then they beat Japan. So, that kind of is as good as it gets in many ways. First win at Twickenham in 38 years, first win in Paris since 99, empty stadiums notwithstanding. And yet, it's hard to know, what do Scotland regard as the trickier year? Because England and France coming to Murrayfield can be a bit scary, and then suddenly if you go to Dublin and Cardiff, you can end up with very little by the end of that.
Yes, absolutely, and it's not exactly like Dublin's been a happy hunting ground for Scotland in recent years either. Yeah, I think, I'm not joking when I say that you speak to people in the streets of Scotland and there's the fear of hope. There's the fear of hope, because And I'll tell you what is even more terrifying is when people outside of Scotland talk up their chances. We had a column in the Times this week from Sam Warburton saying that Scotland could win it. We've had Clive Woodward bigging them up. I did a special podcast for the Times last week, and I interviewed Gregory Aldrit, the number 8 for France, and he said the team he fears the most is Scotland. I'll tell you what, if you're from north of the wall, that's scary talk to be listening to. But also the fact that you mentioned there, okay, it's great to be playing your biggest rival up first at home with a crowd back as well. I mean, the atmosphere for that will be unbelievable. Playing France there, you want to get them there and not Paris. It's funny, you speak to some players and they say that Paris is one of the worst places to play. It doesn't quite feel like it should when you go there. So they'll be happy to have them at home. But there's so many monkeys to get off the back every season, and Dublin is, as I mentioned, not a happy place to play. They'll be wanting to come up well against Wales because, as you say, coughed that one up last year, and then obviously we can write off Italy, as most people will for most of the Six Nations. But could it end up being, for example, the bookmakers, if you look at the table as they have it now, Oddschecker look at all the different bookies, and they have a clear separation. France, England and Ireland, they have it as the top 3. Then they have it down as Wales likely to finish 4th, Scotland 5th and Italy. So they clearly feel like there's a separation of powers. And the way that this shakes out, Scotland could play lovely stuff, and we have seen that from them, and still end up in that bottom half of the table going, geez, what happened?
And when you cast a glance over the likely Scottish 15 that might start, for instance, against England, what's your assessment? Where are the strengths? Where are the weaknesses?
Well, there's a name there that you mentioned, Cameron Redbath, bursting onto the scene. He has not had his injury problems to see. And if we assume that Finn Russell came through the weekend unscathed, wasn't fantastic with the boot for Racing 92, but was playing his usual style with the ball in hand. Who do you play in the centres with him? We know that Harris is nailed on, a starting line centre. And who would have said that 2 years ago? Has had incredible form the last few seasons for Gloucester. He is in with the bricks for Scotland. But it's that slot in between Ali Price and Finn Russell, and Stuart Hogg at the back and Chris Harris. Do we see Cameron Redpath come in? Certainly that's something that would excite everyone, and it would be a lovely little narrative for his game back to be against England, who he performed so well in that Calcutta Cup win last year. We know what to expect, and the new issue of Rugby World comes out next week, and in it we've got a column from Rory Best, and one of the things he suggested was Scotland are a good team, they can play nice stuff, but and if they win, it wouldn't in certain games it wouldn't be seen as an upset because they're a good team. This is a very competitive competition. However, do they have the front 5 to compete with everyone else? And that's exactly where you've got to worry about Scotland, is when they come up against the likes of Ireland. We know exactly what Ireland have got up front. We know the incredible form that we've seen from that front row in particular. We know exactly how well they can play and how incredible Tadhg Furlong can be, and the rise of Andrew Porter goes on and on and on and on. Do they have the squad to go toe-to-toe with that? That's the big question mark for them.
Yeah. Finn Russell's such an interesting proposition in that the gifts are there for all to see and he's a joy to watch, and yet there can be a flakiness or a moment of madness in there, which at test level in particular can cost a game, and that would have always been the accusation thrown his way. I thought the Lions tournament was the Lions series was a very good summer for him, in that the Lions looked turgid and out of ideas and dull, frankly, for so much of that series, until Russell got his chance in an unplanned way and was phenomenal. And I don't know, maybe as the years go by, rugby increasingly is moving in a direction which suits Finn Russell.
Yeah, it's sometimes you think that the best scenario for Scotland and Finn Russell is it's like that Heath Ledger quote from Batman, where he asks everyone to introduce a little chaos. That's what you need from him, and it felt like a shot in the arm for that Lions tour, because there was you say turgid, and so much of it that stood out even more because there wasn't great fanfare, there weren't crowds swarming around the stadium, there weren't huge noises coming from the stand, and the Lions tried to play a certain pragmatic way. Now, the Finn can be his own worst enemy sometimes, but it makes it all the more entertaining, whereas sometimes he'll speak his mind, and he said, there's a certain style that was played there that didn't suit me. I think Gregor Townsend knows exactly what to expect from Finn Russell, and there can be moments of madness. We've seen him get cards. We saw him get carded in the last Six Nations. He's come a cropper against England and then come back on and still perform well in a big win. And whether or not he has that circus music playing in his head as he's running around, it can be incredibly entertaining. But actually, you know what? If I were to put my neutrals hat on, everyone else wants to see him play, and they want to see the best of him, and they want to see the worst of him. Because if this Six Nations is as close as we hope it will be, with teams in as fine a form as we hope they will be, then you need the game breakers. And all the noises that we're hearing so far, that England wants to play a much more attacking style, as we saw in November with Marcus Smith leading the way. He talks to Finn Russell about the style of play that they have. Finn Russell plays the way that we see him playing, regardless of who he's up against. And then we've got France, who want to hopefully run it from wherever you want. So with that, with great responsibility comes great risk, and etc., and vice versa. All that, will we see more interceptions? Will we see more spilled balls? Will we see games decided by a little mistake here, a moment of magic there? Brilliant. That's what we want from the Six Nations. And on the eve of this tournament, that's all we can hope for.
And in Scotland, the last one on Finn Russell, is he beloved, or is there is he a divisive player in some respects? The pragmatists versus the romantics.
No. I think there's very much a sense of he's one of our own, and the idea of Scots love nothing more than sort of upsetting the odds and sort of tipping the apple cart, and will forever be the underdogs. And he's exactly the kind of, his fable has just grown and grown and grown. There was that phenomenal draw against England, 38-all, where famously had the fallout at half-time because they felt that the game plan was too pragmatic, and then in the second half, whoa, where did Scotland come from? And they were just playing this exceptional stuff. And that character is just, it feels very Scottish. And as I say, with that, you've got to take the rough with the smooth. But when it's good, it's exceptional. And I think you'd be hard pushed to find anyone that doesn't love the way that he plays the game.
Wales are such an interesting case for so many reasons, and they always have been a contradiction in terms the regions have struggled traditionally, and yet this great generation continue to defy all conventional wisdom and their club form. Bunch of them are missing now, a lot of injuries, and there is a sense that papering over the cracks is about to stop with a thudding halt, and Welsh rugby could be in for a degree of self-recrimination and crisis, really, unless they surprise us all again, like they've done in 2 of the last 3 years. But it's harder and harder to see it this time around.
Yeah, it's what you've hit there is the idea of Wales have always been about synergy with a capital S. You can't say greater than the sum of their parts because they have phenomenal rugby players, but their form with the regions has been awful, and yet they come in for Wales and they pull together in a way that is frankly hard to explain, and put on these incredible performances and put a streak of wins together. And how long can that last? How exhausting can that be nationally? And you mentioned the injuries. Now, the interesting thing with the injuries,
it can last about 20 years and counting.
Yeah, and the thing, yes, absolutely. And the thing with Wales and the injuries is Wayne Payback, the head coach there, hasn't exactly had a clean run of health with this team for the last couple of seasons anyway. So if we look at the last 3 or so test windows, there have been injuries to deal with. So they've had to blood a lot of players to come in. But by the same token, if we look at Dan Biggar being nailed on at fly-half, he's been named captain, and we know that he is a constant. He is a North Star for this Welsh team. But then you look at who's playing outside them. Now, if actually the big point is actually if you're playing against Ireland in this first game, if you look at the test teams from the squads from last season to this, it's almost an identical pack for Ireland, whereas Wales have lost back rowers and certainly 2 big name second rowers in their squad. So it's even in the over a space of a year, it's a different looking pack for them. But also you look outside Dan Biggar. Eddie Jones was talking recently about how important it is to have that 10-12 axis. That was a lot looking at Marcus Smith and Owen Farrell outside him with a boatload of experience. But if you look at the centres that will be playing outside of Danbigger, and in the Wayne Pivac era, there have been 12 different combinations of centres, 11 different in terms of personnel, and then we've had the same 2 centres swapped for 2 tests, so we're wearing different numbers on their back. 12 different combinations at centre, and you're trying to get consistency together. Eventually, that's possibly going to exhaust, and that comes from Russ Petty, who's done an awful lot about the makeup of teams. And if you look at that and you say, right, what's predictable about this Wales team? There's going to be something different. And maybe that's where that synergy starts to rub off a little. On the other side of that coin, Joe, you hit on the fact that it can last a long time. And Wales, in their national psyche, seem to have reserves of this. And you look at the form of there's a big national discussion going on there about the form of the regions and what they expect from them. You look at the personnel that they've got there. Liam Williams, I've heard a lot of people say out west, hasn't had the best of times with Scarlets recently. Is he playing his happiest rugby with them? What's going on there? But by the same token, he's a guy that can come into the Welsh national team, turn it on, and he can control a game from the back and also split a game wide open. And it's what makes this Six Nations endlessly fascinating, is what teams are going to turn up, how are they going to expect. Obviously, I've mentioned the bookies, and Ireland will still be favoured for that one, but can Wales hold on? And actually, more importantly, can Wales hold on and pull it together for 5 games in a row?
I'm curious for your thoughts on England. It feels like, of anybody, Eddie Jones is in the most experimental mood with a view to the World Cup. The French have been building for a World Cup for a time, and they've almost found, to a large extent, the young group who are going to bring them all the way to 2023 and probably beyond. They're just that young. It feels like Jones at the start of a bit of a World Cup experimentation. So it's, I mean, you on the one hand you would think after last year's dismal Six Nations, could he really afford another dismal Six Nations? But he does look to be in the mood to try a few things here.
Well, yes, and it felt like his hands were forced a little bit, not from outside powers, but he realised that there was something had to change for England in November. It's why we saw that sea change in how the style of play that they want to have. So it seems like, it feels like Marcus Smith was the choice, hell or high water, and the idea was always that Owen Farrell was going to be sort of the hand on the tiller outside him. Obviously, we've lost Owen Farrell now for the duration of this tournament, and he's a guy who we hear so many noises about how much control he has in the way that England attack. So now we're going to have to see something, and no matter what we see from England now, it's going to be something different in the Six Nations from them. They still have incredible personnel up front. They have a few injuries of their own, and actually, the bigger question mark about them is who's the leadership group going to be on the field? How much are they going to have to rely on experienced players that might not necessarily be seen as captains, but the kind of people that are vital to the way that they play? A character like Joe Marler, for example, who is up front, is incredibly important to them. Is how much are they going to rely on guys like that, and how much is the new style of England going to come through with a different leadership group? I mean, if you were to ask me about identity of England, it's a question mark for me, and potentially a very, very exciting one. I mean, I can't remember the last time that we'd be sitting on the eve of the Six Nations and going, "Oh, England are going to give us something that we might not expect." You know, that's slightly unusual. Obviously, they're still heavily favoured to be in that band of 3, head and shoulders above everyone else. But to be able to look at them and say, well, maybe they're going to play some fascinating rugby with Marcus Smith, and maybe will we see as much ball hoisted in the air and scavenging off errors? It's I don't know. Will they fall back into what they know and the field placement, and you stand here and you do that there, and fantastic. That didn't work last year. So is it a case of this has to be something completely different?
One of the many aspects of this tournament, which is great, is that everyone can beat everyone on any given day, with the exception of Italy, who are and remain a problem for this tournament. And they're probably more of a problem than they've ever been, actually, because there was a time when they did get occasional results. It's now at a point where a lot of rugby fans don't watch the game that Italy are involved in, because what's the point unless it's their country playing Italy? And even then, there's not much to savour in the build-up or the aftermath. And I don't see that pattern changing. I don't know how it's changed. It's at about round 2 or 3 that the should there be relegation conversation starts, and that's just in lieu of anything else interesting to say about Italy, because it all feels very hopeless. New coaching ticket Is there anything about Italy that suggests it might be a different 2022?
Yeah, well, certainly, speaking to folk in Italy lately, you mentioned a new coaching ticket. They've got a new captain in Lamaro who will be leading the way from the back. Garbisi, the fly half, there's a lot of expectations for him, and actually his form from Montpellier in particular is something that is exciting a few people in the way that he's guided them around the park when Andre Pollard hasn't been playing for them. So they have young talent coming through. And the noises we always hear from Italy every year are, look at the under-20s. There's talent there. They're bedding in. We need to get these guys up to a standard now. I spoke to Franco Smith recently, who's been replaced as the head coach of this team and is a performance director now within the federation. And he talked an awful lot about getting the monkey off the back. And actually, through the past, there might be the odd win, but really it was just a case of getting the monkey off the back, and then, we're going to have to go through a hell of a time until we get that monkey off the back again. We're coming on for 7 years now since they've won this Nations match, which is a mind-blowing statistic for the most, with the exception of the World Cup, this is the financial engine of the international game. And there's a team in there that many teams see as a lame duck. The fear as well is that as we edge closer to 2023, there's going to be fewer calls for experimentation against Italy and more calls of, right, let's drop the odd player in here, but keep the core and try and really hammer and get things clicking and start pouring on exceptional form against them. The noises you hear from Italy are that, well, firstly, it's been made clear that relegation isn't on the cards. They're in with the bricks, and there's no point in talking about kicking them out or relegation or some sort of playoff against a team like Georgia, because they're here to stay, at least for the foreseeable future. That'll be a great shock when suddenly we go, oh, look, the financial powers from the Southern Hemisphere in South Africa are keen to come in, and they are got lots of interest, financial and rugby-wise, to come and play. But for now, it's Italy. We've got to stick with them. So the noises that you keep hearing from the Federation it's about incremental improvement. Performance needs to be better, fewer errors, fewer penalties against them, better defence. All the things that we consider the basics of Test rugby, they need to get more competitive in. And then that'll lead to a win, and then a win might lead to two. And the big things for them that I keep hearing is they don't want to be the team that's seen as an easy win. They want to be the team that if you want to win the Six Nations, you've got to beat them. And the other thing is that no one wants to lose to Italy. Because after all this time out, the 7-year itch and all of this time where they've not been winning Test matches, who wants to be the team that loses for the first time to Italy? It's going to be gruesome stuff. But who's to say that we won't be waiting for many years to come before that happens? It's if you were to ask me, is this going to turn around the next season? Are they going to be competing for the championship? Nah. Could we get to a point where they ever compete for a championship? It's hard to see. It's just got to be better.
Yeah. Even though it just get back to a point where they can ambush a team. That's just a bit of jeopardy, and we've got to be. Very few tournaments have everybody at a certain standard. If the odd ambush is absolutely fine. So I'm going to run out of time before I get to Ireland, which is not what usually happens on this show. So that's fine. We talk enough about Ireland. Do you have France as the favourites like everybody else, or how do you see them? I've about 90 seconds for you here, Alan.
Well, yeah, the bookies fancy them as favourite. I suppose I'll leave you with what Gregory Aldrich said to me recently, the France number 8. He said, 2 years in a row we finished second. We've got to get used to being front runners. It's time to win the thing. Yeah.
Well, everything's pointing that way at the moment. Listen, great to get your thoughts on how it's all set it up a week out. Alan Dimmock from Rugby World Magazine, the features editor. Thanks a million. Cheers, Alan.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.